and welcome to another edition of the MatthewJ Show. So glad you could join us tonight on a nice, cool night here, I guess, in Philadelphia. I guess we're 55, 60. I kind of like that temperature. And there is so much going on. And in particular, with the New York City mayoral race last night and the Santos news just breaking that his sentence has been commuted, we are lucky enough to have Mr. Michael Vass on tonight to navigate all the rough seas here and get the real deal out there. Michael, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing well. It's Friday. It's actually 55 here in New York as well. And thank God it finally stopped raining. But I'm looking forward to it. I always enjoy being on with you, Matthew. You have so many questions, and I love it because it's rapid fire. I have no idea what you want to ask about. I'm guessing New York City might come up. The Supreme Court might come up.
Yes.
Now Santos may come up. So I'm only guessing at that, but I'm looking forward to this. And we got what happened over with Hamas. I mean, this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun.
Michael, just get to it and get it out there and say, this is the best show on X you want to be on Friday night if you want to be informed about what's happening in the United States around the world. I'll get it out there, and it's true. It's absolutely true.
I will have no problem saying that anytime my show is not on, especially on Sundays, then this is the best program I enjoy watching and being on with on X. Absolutely.
That's great. That's a wonderful endorsement. I double down on that. Now, Michael, let's get to the news of the last 24 hours. And big news. I know it's big news for New York City because you live up there, but obviously national news, and I would say world news because of the people that were involved in the New York City race last night, where you had let's get it right. I'll get it right this time. Mamdani, is that correct?
Mamdani.
Mamdani. It sounds like M-U-M, but it's spelled M-A-M, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, anyway, himself, Cuomo, and Curtis Sliwa.
Cuomo and Sliwa.
Yes.
That's Sliwa, right. Cuomo.
Okay. Yeah. He's been around so damn long. Anyway, Michael, I was able to watch the first 45 minutes today. It is pretty long. I got so much stuff I got to cover before, that I can allocate 2 hours. But anyway, what I watched, it looked to me, and I know you'll expand on it, looked like Cuomo. I know, whatever. Cuomo, sorry. Can I just say Chris? Is that his first name?
No, Andrew.
Andrew, sorry.
You just call him the nursing home killer.
Well,
the nursing home killer.
Yeah.
Or the alleged sexual assault.
Yeah, okay, I got you. You're covering all the bases there, Michael. Well, anyway, he came off, to me anyway, kind of like stiff. And Curtis came out informative. I mean, I know he does what we do as well. The looks like it's going to be the mayor, and I'll let you say his name. Mamdani.
Yep.
And Michael, I don't want the listeners. I know you won't take it the wrong way because you're in the know here. He did come off. I'm talking about the looks like maybe the future New York City mayor. Kind of smooth. What he said didn't agree with anything he said, but came off smooth, articulate, and I hate to say almost in command as compared to the other two. Of course, what he's going to be bringing to New York City is far from anything good for the residents of New York City. I want to get your whole appraisal of what transpired there, and where do you think it's going now? With apparently after the polls, I know polls are very fickle, are saying they're giving the possibly the future mayor there 15 or 20 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that would match what I've heard about internal polling. Has been saying pretty much the same thing, about 20 points. I think when it's all said and done, he's going to be closer to about 12.
Okay.
If I have to give a single number, I'd say he's going to win by about 12 points. He's getting some pushback. People are learning about his policies, the failures that they are inspired by, or actually copy and pasted failures from across the country. And when you actually try and nail him down for an answer, like not just his feelings, not his hopes and desires, but actual real world, how does this work? Like how you're going to pay for it all. Then he kind of falters because now he's got to deal with nuts and bolts rather than hopes and dreams, he fails. But your assessment is correct. On that stage yesterday, looking at Andrew Cuomo and also Curtis Sliwa, two men who are in their 70s, and you're looking at a man half their age, he looked a lot more energetic because he's half their age. And he seemed a lot more poised, which is, and actually, I would have expected more from Cuomo. He's usually very good at these kinds of things, but he's been out of practice for a while. So Zorhan's been working with his team, and he was very operatic, very theatrical.
Yes.
And I would say he's probably gotten a lesson or two on acting because of the way he was presenting himself.
Absolutely.
That's not a good or bad thing. Many politicians do, but it came across very clearly. He didn't have any genuine empathy. I think for genuine empathy, you got the most of that from Curtis Sliwa. I may have a slight bias there, but I do believe he came across as the most empathetic. And the most energetic was, of course, Mamdani, and really, really horrible showing for Cuomo. Now, that's their presentation. The content, totally different. If you're looking at content in terms of the policies, the most realistic individual in the entire group would be Sliwa. If you listen to his policies, they actually make the most sense. They're the most real world and grounded. Cuomo would then come in second because he does have the experience and he is being somewhat more grounded, somewhat.
Right.
But then you listen to Mamdani and everything is pie in the sky, hopes and dreams. We're going to try a failed policy again. And these are policies that failed in Kansas City. They failed in Eugene, Oregon. I mean, literally, he was comparing.
Michael, let me stop you there. You had a post on your X account about this whole thing he referenced to in Eugene, Oregon. Could you let the audience know exactly what that was about?
Yeah, he was trying to push this idea of using social workers as police to send them out to cases that seem to be about mental health. Now, if you've looked at mental health issues, as an example, most recently in South Carolina on the train, when we saw that Irina Zartuska was stabbed 22 times in the neck, that was a guy, mental health issues. He wants to send social workers to deal with guys like that in New York to solve problems. That's a problem waiting to happen. And he said, well, he's doing it because Eugene, Oregon, a city of 200,000 people, he's using their model. It's called CAHOOTS, CAHOOTS. That program ended April 7th, 2025. It failed. Okay. It failed because it was too expensive and they couldn't do the job. They couldn't keep up with the pace. This is a city of 200,000 people. Way less money, way less expensive, much smaller need in that city, which is very homogenized, very uniform. And they didn't have the problems. You're talking about New York City, 8.5 million people from every country on the face of the earth, every religion, every different kind of background, mental issues, wars, everything is in this city. And you cannot compare Eugene, Oregon to New York City. That's just, and he's saying, no, we'll just copy that failed program and do it in New York and it'll work fine. What's the problem? Because it's a waste of money and stupid.
Michael, let me ask you real quick. How does, and he brought it up against Mamdani, brought it up last night about how he wants free bus service. I think he said 5 bus lines he wanted free. How would he exactly pay for that? That's a major expenditure because, as you know, in my previous life, I was a transit official. That is big money.
Okay. He actually said, and this is why you know he has no idea what he's talking about. He had a pilot idea where he took 5 buses, not 5 bus lines,
okay,
but 5 buses, 1 bus in every borough of New York, 1 of the 5, 1 in each borough.
Okay.
And he made it with this free program that he's copying from Kansas City, where it failed after 3 years in Kansas City. It failed, cost tens of millions of dollars. And he wants to use that plan and use it in New York. Do you notice there's a repetition here? And he's saying that because it worked on one line in each borough, it's going to work if he does it to there's well over 700 buses in New York. Over 700. And he says, well, now it's going to it worked once, so it'll work in every single case. That's stupid. That you can't even do statistics on that. It is so beyond the pale. And we have proof it doesn't work. But he's going to do it anyway because hopes and dreams, and it's free stuff. How's he going to pay for it? Higher taxes. How do you get higher taxes in New York? You have to get the governor to raise the tax rate. Governor, who's going to be up for election in 2026, and I hope she loses. I expect she will. Well, she has to raise taxes. She's already said she's not going to. And so what did Mamdani say when he was challenged and said, well, the governor's not going to raise taxes. You can't raise taxes. What are you going to do? I'll find a way. In other words, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about, and you're lying to the public. You're selling them free stuff that you know you can't give them. This is going to be a complete, well, I can't use that word. It's a cluster. It's going to be such a horrendous failure.
What are other things, Michael, that he's been discussing that he wants to do, like, from Jump Street when he gets on there, as far as like minimum wages to $30, and as far as the police forces is concerned, will he really be putting his mark on to say how the NYPD operates? Is he kind of obviously anti-police? And the reason I ask that, Michael, is because obviously we see, like, let's just say, for example, the No Kings rally tomorrow, which is all over the country.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of big rallies in New York City, like here in Philadelphia and around the country. Will he put like a leash on NYPD? Will the protesters think that they will have, run of the day? They'll be able to do anything they want because they got their boy in office?
Yeah. I think this came up in the second half of the debate, and he was asked directly because he's engaged in many protests so far as an assemblyman on his own. He's engaged in many of the protests, and he was asked, if you were to get elected as a sitting mayor, would you still be going out and protesting? He refused to answer that question. He was asked twice, refused to answer that question. I think that says a lot about him. It also says a lot about what's going to happen in the protests. We already know he's already stated clearly, repeatedly, and protested to defund the police, a failed idea that they tried across the country, in particular in Minneapolis. And when polled, the black community in Minneapolis, 72% said, no, we want as many, if not more police. Don't defund the police, bring them back. And we've seen cities like Seattle, where they defunded the police, and now they're spending extra money just to get back to the old numbers. Same thing here in New York. We're trying to do the same thing. We're short 7,000 police officers. And again, Mamdani's plan is cahoots. He's going to hire social workers, not more police officers. He's going to hire social workers. Not the same thing. And we would expect that, based on his politics, based on the fact that he's willing to still go out and protest as a sitting mayor, that you're going to see more crime and you're going to see more protests. And those protests we have seen consistently in New York City and across the country. The left is violent.
Yeah.
They result in arson, vandalism, looting, robbery, property destruction, and very often arson, if not outright murder or physical attacks. So this is what we've seen consistently, especially since 2020.
Michael, let me ask you real quick. Why is it a requirement for the New York City mayoral candidate to have visited a mosque? Why is that a requirement all of a sudden?
It's not. I mean, if that's the case, then have you visited a church?
Yeah, there you go.
Visited a synagogue? Have you gone to the Buddhist monk temple? Did you go and visit that? There's a lot of religions in the world. Have you gone to all of them? Have you participated in all of their different?
That's a good point.
Religions? No. Why? Because it's absolutely not necessary. Because what the hell does that have to do with whether or not crime is up or down in this city?
Yes.
Whether or not a business is opening or closing in this city? What the hell? Who cares? Religion is a personal, private matter. You can believe whatever you wish to believe. That is a tenet, First Amendment of America.
Good point.
Fantastic. But the mayor is under no obligation to go to or not go to any religious organization. And to say that is to not understand the First Amendment and to enforce that literally is enforcing religion onto people by saying you have to go to this religious organization or that religious organization. And by doing that, that's preferential. So now you've even created a legal problem, because if the mayor doesn't go to every religious organization, well, now you're showing preferential treatment, you're biased, and you're an official of the government. Well, isn't that going to be violating the equal treatment of people? You've now created discrimination.
Well, Michael, I don't know if you watched a couple days ago. He was on Fox News, and every time I keep mentioning it's going to be the supposed new mayor, because I have problems pronouncing his name.
Yeah.
He was asked by the female host on Fox, well, if Benjamin Netanyahu comes to New York City or the UN, are you going to have him arrested under the ICC warrant? And I thought that was a very odd question to ask.
No, it's not really. It's really not an odd question, because that's what he said he wanted to do. But here's the thing. Mamdani is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. The Democratic Socialists of America, by their chapter, by their charter of that organization, they want to destroy the Constitution. They want to eliminate the Constitution and the amendments, and they want to replace it with the human rights of the UN, because they believe in international law. They believe in human rights. Now, to make it real simple, human rights are rights given by countries, and they can be taken away by countries.
Right.
America has a constitution, and you have rights by God, by birth, and they cannot be taken away. So that's the big difference between Democratic Socialists of America and American citizens. Big difference. And so he wants to, because he believes in international rights. By the way, international law does not apply to anyone. That's a figment of imagination. It's a conversation between countries to just pick at each other. It has no rights. England can't come to America and arrest me because I believe that Starma is mentally deranged or deficient. Now, England may not like that. They can't, by international law, come and say, well, you've violated a code, and so therefore you have to be punished. It doesn't exist. But this is what he wants to do, and therefore he wants to arrest various people that he doesn't like, as if he has the right to do so. He doesn't. I mean, it's a great way to start a war, but that's about all it is. He doesn't have
Michael, the ICC warrant doesn't hold any water here in the United States, and that obviously would be a State Department or a federal issue. But the ICC, I don't think is recognized. The International Criminal Court their warrants aren't recognized by the United States, are they?
No, they're not, and for many countries, they're not. Again, international law doesn't exist.
Okay.
It is a wonderful word salad used by progressives to try and push their political agenda, but it holds no weight. No country cares. No country cares. It's just a nice talk.
I got you. And Michael, I am glad that you drove home the point about, you live in New York City, anywhere in America. If you're attached to a religion or not, that's your business. That's your business. So the mosque thing that he kept harping on over and over with Andrew, right? Andrew, I thought was needless to do. Now, I have to ask you something, Michael. What was his record as an assemblyman in New York?
He's basically ineffective, but he does have a bill, which he admits, and he couldn't deny it. It's part of the record. I believe it's Bill A3251, as I recall, Assembly Bill A3251. Zorhan Mamdani is trying to pass legalizing prostitution. Now, he tried to weasel out of it. And if you want to look at the exact wording, it's called sex workers, legalizing sex work. What are sex workers? Prostitutes. So he wants to legalize prostitution. And he did not deny he co-sponsored the bill because he can't. It is a fact. It is a record. You can look it up. Yes, he did. January of this year, he co-sponsored this bill. So he couldn't deny that, but he tried to deny the negative impact of legalizing prostitution. What he wants to do is make it possible for prostitution to happen in front of your school, of your kid's school. Because if it's legal, then they can sell themselves in front of it. And that's, even if you want to say, well, no, it's their body, they can sell it if they want to, fantastic. What about the sex slavery component of prostitution? That is a real thing across the entire country.
Yeah.
That is a massive component. So you're actually advocating, when you're advocating for sex work, you're advocating for prostitution, not just prostitution, but also sex slavery. That is a factor.
No,
he doesn't want to talk about that.
And I know I shouldn't bring this up, but I think he's just described as the first. He will likely be the first Muslim mayor of New York City.
Who cares?
That's
DEI talk. That is
no, I know. Wait, listen, Michael. I can't imagine what's going. I'm watching him on one of my screens now. How New York City is going to look if he's able to implement stuff. But Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. Last time we were on the show, when I asked you questions about what type of powers will he have at his disposal as the potential new mayor of New York City, and you said not as many as you think. A lot of it comes from Albany. Is that
Sure.
Still holds true, right?
Absolutely true. Yeah, it comes from the governor. The governor has a massive amount of control over New York City because the city isn't one county; it's five or six counties. So, because of that, that moves the power from the mayor to the governor, like with taxes, like with the MTA, the funding for the mass transit system, MTA, that's something that comes from upstate. That comes from Albany, the governor's office. They control that, not the mayor.
Michael, they kept asking him questions, I think, about what's your relationship with Donald Trump? What would you do? Or how do you feel about, this if you had to work with President Trump? Like, to me, sometimes, Michael, it's like they're putting him on that level. And I know you and I discussed this before, that this guy isn't like an Obama type individual. He could be someone potentially much more dangerous to America than Obama ever was.
In many ways, yeah. But they use Donald Trump because that's the only answer the left has to all the problems. If you listen, and anyone, you can go right now. No, not right now. After the show, you can go and I don't know why you want to, but you can go to MS Now or CNN, ABC, CBS. Listen to any of the elected officials from the Democrats, the DSA, the progressives, and the answer to every question is Orange Man bad. Everything they say, everything goes back to Orange Man bad. Well, illegal immigration, which has existed and been an issue since before the Reagan administration, we're talking over 45 years ago, and the answer today is Orange Man bad. It's Donald Trump's fault. That makes no sense. Yeah. That's a stupid answer, but that's the answer for everything. And so they've demonized Donald Trump, MAGA, America First, Republicans, and conservatives so much that saying, I'm going to fight Donald Trump, what are they actually saying? I'm going to fight the president of the United States. I'm going to get into a conflict with the chief executive of the country, and I'm going to try and not allow enforcement of the law that Congress, Democrats, wrote and voted for and has been law of the land. That is what they're saying, but they're trying to say it they're saying it to their base. I'm fighting Donald Trump. He's the president. You're fighting the president.
Michael, Michael, wouldn't you characterize that somewhat of a form of insurrection if you're not going to acknowledge federal law?
You can. That's a little bit
of a stretch.
of a stretch, depending on the nature of what they're doing.
For example, the Chicago mayor, Michael,
Brandon?
is saying that, well, we're going to have ice-free zones. Ice won't be allowed there.
Yeah,
He can't say that.
Well, he can say it. It's just not going to happen. He doesn't have that power. Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago, who is one of the few mayors that are even less liked than Adams. Like, I believe Mayor Johnson is at 6%. Mayor Johnson of Chicago, he's got a 6% approval rate. And Mayor Adams has about 20%. So tells you how bad he is. And his idea is, well, I've made it it's like a gun-free zone. Great, you've made a bunch of signs. Whoever your donor is who's making signs, they're going to make bank. They're going to get a $1 million contract to put up a bunch of signs. No ICE agents, just like they put up no gun-free zone. And it's going to have the same impact. It means nothing. No one's going to listen to it. It's not legal. And it's unconstitutional. And it's not enforceable. The city police cannot arrest federal agents lawfully enforcing federal law. You cannot arrest.
No, Michael, I know you and I are sane and rational, and I know what you're saying, but I asked a lawyer this week or last week, if the mayor of Chicago gives a directive to the Metro City Police in Chicago and says, you will not cooperate with ICE and some other directives, and the police say, well, I don't want to lose my pension. I know it's way off the reservation. You don't see a potential clash between ICE and city police, do you?
If someone were to be that stupid and to follow his orders, to interfere, the police officers will be arrested. They're
That's what I'm
violating
thinking.
federal law. That is obstruction of law enforcement, the lawful duty, executing the lawful duty of a federal agent. They will be arrested. They will not have immunity. They will not be protected. And they can't say, well, the mayor sent me to do it, because it was never a lawful order, ever. And they know that. So, yeah, I could see some. Obviously, police officers have the right to have whatever political preferences they want to have. Fine.
Right.
It's quite possible that one of them would have a left-wing basis and might try and do something in uniform. And that person, if Brandon Johnson didn't fire him instantly, would bring a lawsuit into the city. And I would expect the president would be rightfully able and justified to do what I think he should have already done to all the sanctuary cities, to all the sanctuary states. Cut off all federal funding.
Yes.
Boom. Cut it off. You're going to bring an uprising against the federal government. Fantastic. That means you don't want the federal government. Therefore, you get nothing.
Michael, it's not illegal. It's not illegal for any police force in America to not assist ICE. They just can't interfere. And I believe me, I'm against that. I want them to help, fellow law enforcement officers. But as we've seen in Chicago a few Saturdays ago, that's not necessarily the case. But it's not illegal for the police to stand down and not help ICE. Is that right or not?
That is correct. Normally, there is cooperation between various forms of law enforcement, whether it's federal with federal or federal with state, federal with local. There's usually some degree of mutual support, but it's not required. Just like police are not required to help you as an individual. Supreme Court courts have already decided, I think it was a Supreme Court case, that already decided they are not obligated to put their life on the line to protect you. They can just stand back and let you be assaulted or killed. Obviously, that's frowned upon.
Michael,
thing with law enforcement.
I got you. Let me ask you. I'm sure you've been observing what's going on in Portland, Oregon.
Well, before I want to go back to something about Mamdani. That's important.
All right.
Which is the $30 minimum wage. I have covered this since 2018. Each time that it's been brought up in Congress, each time that they've tried to make this a national deal, and I've looked at it locally. Every place that has put in an artificial minimum wage $15, $20. They're talking about 25 and 30. You might as well call it 50, 100. Doesn't make a difference. You get the same exact result every time, and it has been predicted by the Congressional Budget Office 3 separate times now. The answer is you will give a small. First of all, it only affects 3% of the population. Only 3% of America actually makes. Actually, in a very bad year, that's 3%. Average is 1.3% get minimum wage. That's the first thing. Second thing, when you do this, you will see that unemployment will increase because people will be fired to cover the cost. The cost of goods will go up, which will make the poor even more poor. And hours for workers will be cut to make up that difference, besides increasing the prices, because there will be less things sold. So to make up for the volume loss, to make up for the dollar loss, to be able to keep the operations, you will see people have be either outright fired or have their hours cut. In fact, there is a net 9% loss of income because they artificially increased the price. We've seen that in California. 20,000 people lost their jobs because of the $20 an hour minimum wage. It happened in New York City, in Manhattan, because of the $15 an hour minimum wage. It happened in Seattle, in Portland. It has happened everywhere that they have tried this experiment. And at $30, you're going to magnify the amount of people who are going to be unemployed, and you're going to magnify and increase the number of people who are in poverty. This is a stupid idea. And again, empirically, the math has been done. The examples have been done. We know this is a failure, and he's going to impose that. It is going to be devastating. But I wanted to make sure I made that point.
No, that's a good point. I'm glad you clarified all that, Michael. You know, Steve Bannon is he's just out of his mind every day saying, do you realize if this man does win the New York City mayoral race, what's going to happen in New York City? And Bannon keeps referencing, just take a look at London. They're kind of the same kind of trajectory. And I don't know, Bannon seems to think once he gets in there, it's going to be hard to get him out, or once that mindset gets in there. But wouldn't what you're saying, or I mean, this is just my observations, that this would expedite an exodus of business or people out of New York City?
Yes, actually, I've had some people ask me about this, and they're like, "Well, we can pay for it. We'll just have more taxes, 2% more tax on the rich." You know, bringing it up to, for many people who are wealthy, that bring them up to about 52% of everything they make will go to the government. And he says they'll do it because it's just the right thing to do. It's a good thing. They'll feel great because they use the services too. First of all, people who make $1 million, $750,000, $500,000 a year, they don't take the bus. They don't take the subway. They're not on Medicaid or Medicare. They're not on Obamacare. They're not using the same services. No, they don't care about those services because they don't use them. They have the income to have better. So they don't care about that. All they know is you're taking more of their money, and is it worth it? Well, we have seen for over a decade, New York State has been losing, on average, about 200,000 to 300,000 people per year.
Wow.
Because New York is the most business unfriendly state, pretty much 9 out of the last 10 years. 1 year, California beat New York State. And the third worst is New Jersey. So we're the least business friendly because we have so many taxes. We have so much red tape, much of it redundant, and most of it because it's bureaucratic. And we have the highest bureaucratic costs to deal with all the red tape. Businesses don't like this. They've been leaving. We lose about $20 billion a year from these people leaving. Now, Democrats will say, it's not that many people leaving. We're only losing maybe 100,000 a year based on the estimate every year from the census. Not the 10-year, but the 1 year to year. Except remember, Joe Biden in 2021, one of the first executive orders he put out is count illegal aliens. So when you count the 200,000, like last year, 200,000 illegal aliens came into New York City. Well, that counts for all or almost all of the people who left New York State. Now, the difference there is, well, the illegal aliens came in, great. They're dependent. They're sucking money out of the system. The people who left, most of them are middle class or higher. They're taking businesses and their income and their tax revenue out of the state. So the people who are paying for everything, normally about the top 10% spend 71% of all taxes come from the top 10%. They're leaving the state, and you're replacing them with the not just the bottom 50%, but the bottom 20%.
Michael, are the illegals still getting stipends from the city for housing and things like that?
They have reduced it, and they took away the hotels finally because we couldn't afford it. It was costing us about $2 billion a year. So they have taken that away, but they do still have some stipends and some additional spending on them, just not the 4-star hotels anymore. And I believe they finally stopped the $13,000 credit card that they were giving them once a year, and they've reduced that. So, but they're still getting money. Yeah, they're still being very well supported.
No, I'm glad you broke that down for us. Now, Michael, I want to just drift back to the overall situation that we're going to have in the country, not just tomorrow, but I actually have a question again about Portland, Oregon.
Sure.
Now, you've been watching some of the demonstrations and some of the violence with the Antifa and other leftists there in Portland, and of course you had the arrest of that conservative influencer. I can't think of his name right now. He was released the next day. Do you think that the Portland Metro Police, Michael, that they have a cozy relationship with Antifa?
I think the kid's name was Soratos, something like that.
Yeah.
And the relationship between the police and Antifa?
Yes. Is there a cozy relationship, or they don't seem to be breaking the stones?
Well, no, it's just like in Chicago. The mayor and the governor are telling police, do nothing. Let the mayor and the governor are in favor of Antifa. Antifa runs the state, essentially, because they're telling them, even though we know Antifa, even without the terrorist designation, we know that they are a violent, thuggish gang that go out and kill people. They create autonomous zones, which are absolutely illegal at the local, state, and federal level. They cause harm. They destroy cities. They're responsible for 120 days of nonstop, continuous rioting. I believe that is a record in the world because riots, on average, only last 3 to 5 days. They had 120 days of nonstop rioting because they were going in shifts.
Michael, do you believe that there's high-level coordination, that they have an infrastructure and really significant funding? And if I may add with another question, will the DOJ be able to unravel or uncover exactly who's financing Antifa?
Yes, they are a very organized group. We know this. They have cells that they contact. They have recruitment drives. They have organizational notes, requirements to be part of their organization, and they have a charter, manifesto of goals, which is unifying to all the Antifa cells throughout the entire nation. How they do that? Well, they keep it pretty damn secret. So it's very hard to find that. But they do get funding. I mean, this is how they're able to be sending out messages as they do. They put out their leaflets and pamphlets about where they want to protest, how they're going to protest. That takes logistics. That takes money. That takes communication. And it's not all just online for free. They have to meet people in person. They have to arrange. And you have seen over and over again at these protests with Antifa, you see trucks come up as they protest as the sun is setting, and they unload shields and umbrellas that have been heavy reinforced with bars, rebars, and point shaved down to have points on them at the tip so that they can stab people or beat someone with it. It looks like it's just an umbrella. No, it's actually a weighted metal rod that they're beating people with. Very dangerous. They have to get those milkshakes, or what looks like a milkshake, and very often could be liquid concrete. That's often the case. Sometimes acid. and other caustic materials that they throw at people. All of this stuff costs money.
Yeah.
And sometimes we see pallets of bricks suddenly appear on street corners where they happen to be on the route of them protesting. And suddenly a pile of bricks, or just a pallet of bricks, is just sitting there. Not that there's any construction anywhere around there for miles, but there's bricks. And they suddenly use that to loot. All of this takes money. It can be found. It's basically what you're doing is the same thing we did in the 1920s with Al Capone. We need the Treasury Department to investigate these organizations, these individuals, and track the money. It can be done. It's just going to take time. Yeah, it's a little harder today because you have the internet, you have Bitcoin and all that. But absolutely, it can, and I believe it will be done relatively quickly because none of this happens without.
Well, Michael, there's also an international component, because I have my people over in Ireland tell me that Antifa is running around all over Ireland, UK, and some other countries. So this is an international organization. So not just coming under the investigation or the purview of the FBI or DOJ, but I would say the CIA, they can monitor them if they're overseas, because you don't know the amount of collusion between these operatives. If maybe some of them are coming over from overseas, doing some operations, and then leaving the country, right?
Or they're coming from America to another country to train those.
Yes.
Which is something that we see often with terrorist cells, kind of like the IRGC, the Iranian.
Revolutionary Guards?
Revolutionary Guard Corps. Yes, thank you. Lost the R for a second there. But that's what they do. They send their agents out to other places, like in Lebanon, like in Yemen, like in Gaza. They train terrorists to be terrorists, to train them, make them better at it, give them the logistics, do the planning for them, help to raise money for them. And then they come, and then those same agents of the IRGC go back to Iran, and they say, we have nothing to do with this. Don't know how they happen to learn all of this stuff. It's because you taught them. Same things happening we're talking about with Antifa. Americans have been trained here, and they go through the college system very often, and they go over to other countries very often as college exchange students, and they go into other countries and teach local groups of disaffected youth to be indoctrinated into their quasi-religion to foment unrest. It is an international terrorist organization, which is why.
Michael, do you think Antifa and other groups, because obviously the Democrats are in total free fall, and we kind of know, Michael, what they do when they're backed into a corner, we could see a repeat of the summer of 2020, or I hate to say something even worse. Do you see this inevitable if they're not getting their way, whether they think that they're obviously losing the PR war with the shutdown or other matters, the No Kings rally tomorrow? Do you think in their minds that they feel backed in the corner and they're going to do the only thing they always do, and that is violence?
Well, no. Well, one, yes, they always resort to violence because they believe that speech, you and me talking about them in a way they don't like, is violence. In their mind, and we get this from the colleges, that speech is violence. Therefore, it's a microaggression, and microaggressions are violence. Therefore, you can be violent against the microaggression, which happens to be speech. This is the excuse why Charlie Kirk was killed. This is what they believe and they teach. So they do believe in that violence. I believe that they're going to, I don't see another 2020 Summer of Love riots unless we reach the tipping point and the nation just goes berserk. But I think,
Michael, you and now this is a good assessment you're making. Do you believe that you may not see another summer of 2020 because President Trump, through his actions in the last 9 months, activating the National Guard or the U.S. military, do some portions of the left say, it may not be as easy as the 2020? Is that what you're kind of saying?
No, I'm saying that they know they do not have the appeal that they had then.
Okay.
Nothing unifying. The country does not support the far left or Antifa. That's a fact. Whether the left likes that or not, it is a fact. It's been polled, it's been documented. We're nowhere near where we used to be in terms of that support.
You don't see a resurgence of BLM and the coordination
No,
there with the riding?
absolutely not. But they're not afraid, to answer your other question, they're not afraid. They think that they're winning. They think, because of their echo chamber, kind of like Blue Sky. All they're hearing is from their people that we love you, virtue signal, we think you're great. But they're not talking to anyone else because they know anyone else doesn't agree with them. So they think they're winning. Because they think they're winning and they're getting more converts and that what they're doing is self-evident as good, then they're not feeling like they're backed into a corner. And that leads to the Summer of Love, rioting, burning down 22 cities across America, billions and billions, we're talking tens of billions of dollars in damage across the entire country, not just one city, but across the country. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars. We're talking about one city, Minneapolis, that's over $2 billion in damage just in that city alone. So they're not feeling like they're in that situation anymore because they think they have some positive traction because people like Mamdani, people like AOC, Ilhan Omar, and Presley, that they've won offices. What they should be noticing is that people like Jumaane Williams and there was like 4 or 5 of their people lost their Cory Bush. They were elected and they lost their elections. People don't want them. They're not seeing that part.
That's a good point. Michael, listen, we may be getting back. We're going to be getting back to domestic issues in a second, but I have a more pressing issue I want to get your thoughts on. Obviously, you've been following closely what's happening with the interdiction or the drug interdiction, some of the speedboats being sunk, and with with fatalities being involved in these operations. And of course, I see the Adam Schiffs of the world going ballistic about President Trump taking these actions when his pal Obama did some of these actions and where drone strikes and American citizens were actually killed. But that's probably another show. Michael, where are we headed with Venezuela as far as stepping it up to a potential special operations or maybe a total invasion? Where do we stand right now? I saw an ex post by a woman in Aruba saying that the country was surrounded by U.S. warships. She's just making an observation. Obviously, that being right off the coast of being right next to Venezuela. Do you think there's going to be military action relatively soon by the U.S. military against Venezuela?
No. Yes, people are seeing the ships. By the way, let's remember, Southern Command, SOCOM is what it's sometimes abbreviated as. We've been in the Caribbean as long as we've had the Caribbean. I mean, it's not a new thing. It's part of us protecting America. We always have had ships throughout the Caribbean. So
that's a good point.
The fact that people are seeing it, well, they're paying more attention to it now than they have been before. It's not that they're suddenly there and they never were there before. Now, Venezuela is like in the most recent case where we have 2 individuals rumored, and it is only rumored, 2 people are alive. That's not a fact. But a submarine was destroyed.
I saw that.
And a lot of submarines have been used, and we've captured some of these submarines with 3 tons of cocaine on them. This is a way, because it's very hard to find a submarine because they're not nuclear powered. They're powered with wood and plywood, fiberglass. They're very ramshackle.
Yeah.
And so they don't register like most. We're looking for nuclear submarines. We're not looking for something like that. And they're relatively quiet and small. So they can slip in a lot more easily. So we're blowing those up. Fantastic. I got no problem with that. the president does have the authorization by law to take these threats to the American people out. They're a clear and present danger. The drugs they bring in are costing American citizens their lives. That is a fact. Whether it's overdose or through crime, people, American citizens, are being harmed. This is a threat to the nation. That's a national security threat. Therefore, the president has the right to defend the nation. What people are upset about is, but they didn't have a trial. You don't always have to have a trial for a criminal, for someone who is actively endangering people's lives. You don't need to, and I understand, they want it and they go, it's international law. Again, international law doesn't count. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's a great way to complain about something that you don't like, but it has no weight and no reality. It's not there. Will Venezuela go to war? Maduro is not that stupid. If anything, he would love for America to invade for a day so he could surrender, and the rest of the world will take pity on him and empathy, and because Orange Man bad, and they will give his country all of the food and help that they need because socialism doesn't work. He hopes that America will invade because it will help improve the quality of life for the citizens in that country. And it will help hold off an uprising that will get rid of the socialists. It'll take time, maybe another 5 years or so, but the socialists will be toppled because people can only starve.
Michael, what percentage do you believe of the Venezuelan people actually would support or are supporting the Trump administration on trying to get rid of Maduro? That's 30%, 40%. There's got to be people there in that country that say, you know what, we're kind of tired of all this bullshit.
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, you're talking about like 20%, maybe a little bit more of their country don't live in their country anymore. They've left to go throughout all of South America, Central America, and of course, yes, some of them also get to America. They're what, like the third or fourth largest number of, if you're looking at countries of origin for illegal aliens, Venezuela's third or fourth on the list. It depends on who's counting and when, but somewhere they're in the top 5 countries entering into the United States illegally. Their people are running away. They've been running away since about 2019. So it's hard to say. Of the people left who are still in Venezuela and can't get to some other country, I would imagine that it's somewhere around 20, 30%. No. Standard rule of thumb is about 30%, 20 to 30% of any population of any country are dissatisfied with their leadership at any given moment. You look at elections. No one really counts the first 20% of an election because there's always 20% of people. You can always find 20% of people who vote.
Michael, what would you envision if, hypothetically, if this goes, and I don't want anybody to get killed, and I think invasion sometimes there'll be a lot of blowback on it. If the United States obviously invaded or did some surgical strikes and decapitated or got regime change or tried to get regime change quickly, some are saying that, Maduro, of course, could be a lot of bluster, that there's he says he can have about 600,000 militiamen ready to meet the American troops when they landed. Now, again, what do you see that be happening? And I hate to say this, but it's like I'm sure the U.S. has practiced this, like when we've done some Middle East operations. I'm sure that the United States will not go in and be bombing Venezuelan oil facilities, particularly if there is regime change and that new regime is friendly to the United States.
Well, we would most likely see kind of a Delta Force or SEALs team go in and decapitate the head of the government, assassinate Maduro,
arrest him.
Assassinate,
okay.
Arrest, assassinate him, some of his key generals, a couple of the top dignitaries, wipe them out. That would be the easiest way to topple the government and the least bloody. Now, I was laughing, 650,000 militiamen in Venezuela is not a fighting army. That's rabble. you might as well just say he has 600,000 civilians that are willing to fight.
They're just putting a gun in their hands. They're just putting an AK in their hands.
Mind you, these people are not well trained, because if you gave them guns, they'd use it against the government. So
Yes,
there's not a lot of people who are allowed to have firearms or to train with firearms or get learning about tactics, because they would topple the government. But I'm sure he could throw, through force or bribery, he could throw tens of thousands of people in front of U.S. troops, using them as a shield. And much like what we saw in the Iraq War, those people will give up the instant that they see an American troop. They don't want to fight. They can't fight. They don't want to die. They'll just give up. We saw that in Operation Desert Storm. Iraqis would see us and go, drop their guns.
Michael, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, and I kind of feeling I know what your answer is going to be. I understand that this drug scourge, the fentanyl, and the possible CCP connection with Madero. What level should we go to? What lengths should we go to put an end to this? And do you think that there'll be a rise in anti-Americanism in that part of the world if we go in and we do end up invading? Or do you see us not occupying, just going in, knocking them out, like you said, and just leaving? Is there any potential blowback, is what I'm asking you, for an operation like this?
So there's what I would like, and then there's what's going to happen. Let me clarify the two. I do not believe that the United States should be involved in any conflict where we do not take what we win. If one American soldier puts their foot on the ground on foreign soil, and that foreign soil is being contested, someone's going to shoot or fight for that land. If we win, and we would win, we own it. Period. Full stop. I don't care. It's colonialism. I don't care. Screw that. If an American could possibly bleed, it is ours if we win. Point blank, no other question. And therefore, if we go into Venezuela, we take over Venezuela. It becomes a commonwealth of the United States, much like Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands or Samoa. And then we can build infrastructure, same thing that we should have done in Iraq, same thing we should have done in Afghanistan. We build the infrastructure of the country. We build hospitals, schools. We give them the Constitution to live under and the dollar to be able to buy things with. So they have some kind of stability. They have some kind of future. They have an education, a higher quality of life for their kids. We bring in modern medicine, which the socialists have completely failed at.
Yeah.
That's why measles, mumps, and rubella, the reason why there's cases in the United States, it's Venezuelans who since 2018 left Venezuela and have been bringing measles, mumps, and rubella to countries throughout all of South America, all through Central America, and into the United States. By the way, that's a determination from 2018 by the World Health Organization. It's not me just guessing.
Michael,
They know that.
At some point, Michael, wasn't Venezuela a profitable country, a country that was doing well?
Yes.
And then Chavez came on the scene and gutted it?
Yes, it was actually one of the most, it was the richest country in South America and Central America. Yeah.
And Chavez and then Madero, and now where we are now.
And socialism does what socialism.
And wasn't there a big thing with hyperinflation for many years? It's probably still going on, right?
Still going on. Still have hyperinflation because socialism does what it always does. It fails. And when it fails, people's lives are destroyed. So I explained what I would like to see happen. We go in, take over the country, we rebuild the country, and in 2 generations, they get to vote to either be an independent country, a state, or remain a commonwealth, just like Puerto Rico and all the other commonwealths that we have. That would be good for the U.S. economy. It would be good for the people of Venezuela. But the world will complain and be like, oh, it's colonialism, blah, blah, racism, whatever. Who cares? Stupid. I don't care. But what will probably happen is, like I said, a SEAL team or a Delta Force, something of that nature, would go in, take out Maduro, force the country to go into a new set of elections. Probably a puppet government would win with support from the United States and other Western nations. That means England, that means Germany, that means France, it means Spain. Other first world and second world nations would be supporting this because it adds to stability, it reduces the amount of terrorism, it reduces the amount of illegal drugs. So we would get, it's not just the United States that would be supporting this. Mexico would support this to get in some form of quasi-puppet government to reorganize the nation. There'll be infighting because since it isn't a genuine public, the citizens of Venezuela, since they didn't bring this forward, it's not their revolution. They're going to contest it, no matter who it is, no matter how successful it is. There will be a civil war, and there will be fighting, which will spill over to other nations, either refugees and or fighting from guerrillas and terrorist organizations. And it'll be a drain on U.S. resources, as well as some of our allies in Europe, in Central America, Mexico. It'll drain resources to fund one side of the fighting, one side or the other.
Michael, the other competing reasons would be that if we don't take action, whether for what's going on with the drug interdiction, that China and Russia are going to be establishing beachheads in Venezuela. I'm sure they obviously the Trump administration is saying that the fentanyl whatever is being coordinated with China and Venezuela and making its way up here and through the cartels as well. So it's for, I guess, for geopolitical reasons, this is on our plate and we have to address it fairly soon.
Yes. Yes. Fentanyl, the majority of fentanyl is coming from, it's originating in China. And China is using the distribution channels that already exist. That's the drug cartels to bring it into America. It's good for China. It destabilizes America. It drains our resources, and they have deniability.
I got you. No, now, Michael, listen, I forgot to bring this when we were back on our New York situation.
Sure.
And we want to talk a little bit about the breaking news just before you and I came on the air, which is former Congressman George Santos having his sentence commuted. I didn't know he was doing 7 years, but President Trump commuted his sentence. I'm watching CNN live. They're going out of their minds about it. What brought about this? Was it kind of did you think they went too far as charging him, one, and the fact that the GOP really quickly moved to expel him from Congress? And I remember that made our little, as far as many congressmen as we had in the majority, it made it smaller and smaller. What's behind, you think, President Trump getting just commuting his sentence? I mean, Santos is probably elated. You know what I
mean? One, it's a stunt. Two, it's a distraction. Three, he was railroaded. See, the left, yes, George Santos is a con man. That's pretty well established. Except he didn't con people to vote for him. He was legally and correctly elected. Now, there's nothing that says a criminal cannot be elected to Congress. And I don't just mean, well, look at some of the people we got in there, like Chuck Schumer or something.
Yeah.
Or Charles Rangel or Barney Frank. No, we're literally talking about you can be a convicted or unconvicted criminal and you can be elected to Congress. That is allowed. Santos, his crimes were not about his election. When he got into office, whether you think he was doing a good job or a bad job, he was in there. I think they overreached the powers of Congress to remove him in the way they did, because he didn't violate the terms of being a congressman. So it was unfair. Then he got convicted on some of his previous crimes. Fantastic. That's the way the system's supposed to work. He committed a crime. He was found guilty of those crimes. He would have to serve. Then you remove him from office. But before that, he is presumed innocent. That is our legal system. You don't like him because he's a Republican and he won, and Democrats thought they were going to win. So it's one less seat for them, one more for Republicans. That pissed them off. Not only is this guy a cheat, but he's also adding to Republican power. Although, let's be honest, when he got in there, he wasn't really a Republican or a Democrat. He was there for himself.
Yeah.
He was there to enrich and empower himself, not Republicans, not Democrats. But, they're going to push the Republican thing because it sells better than saying, no, he's a swindler and he's out there for himself. And it makes it easier for their base to take credit for this. Well, what they took credit for was abusing the system. And at the root of it is, should he have gotten the full sentence? No, because he was being punished for successfully working through the loopholes in the legal system, the election system, and many of the politicians were embarrassed. Guess what? You get embarrassed. That's not illegal. He was being punished for the wrong thing and being punished in excess. I don't think that he's a great
Michael.
guy.
When I see wire fraud and identity theft, and I know you didn't say this, but was the identity theft part of he lied about who he was and that's how he got elected into Congress? Where's the identity theft thing come in at?
No, that was prior to him running for office, as I recall. It wasn't. He lied about some of the things he had done.
Okay,
but there's I can think of a dozen current sitting members of Congress that have lied about what they've done. That's not unusual. They make up stuff all the time. And we've seen people misremember facts about where they were, what they did. I mean, AOC, I was in the Capitol. No, you weren't. No, you weren't. You're lying. It's vault-based proven fact. You lied. But yet they don't get punished for that. So again, it is the establishment protecting establishment, keeping everyone else out. And this guy, Santos, after he was convicted, I would have agreed with them, keep him out. Before he got convicted, no, now you're abusing your power. There's the difference.
Right. You wonder, Michael, you wonder if Santos had somebody really lobbying the Trump administration hard for this, commutation of a sentence. You wonder, how did this all come about? And I know, we don't know because it just broke a couple hours ago, but it'd be interesting to find out. I don't know if you mentioned, you said it might have been some type of a diversion or done for optics. It's weird.
Mm-hmm. I think at the root of it, besides the fact that his rights were abused to an extent, because he's being used as a scapegoat, but he's also being used as a distraction.
Yes.
If you talk about Santos, you're not talking about government shutdown for 18 days. If you're talking about Santos, you're not talking about, from the Democrats' point of view, well, now I don't have to talk about Trump has successfully garnered peace with Hamas and Israel. He did what he promised. Oh, it wasn't in 24 hours. Do you care? There's more peace in the world than before he did it. So it doesn't matter. And by the way, Democrats couldn't get it done. Progressives couldn't get it done. Every other country on the face of the earth couldn't get to this point now. So you don't have to, it took more than 24 hours. Who cares? It got done. And he was the only one who could get it done. And everyone on the left side that tried failed. Every other country that tried failed. He's the only one who got it done. So for the left, they want Santos. It's good for them. It's good for Republicans. We're not talking about the government shutdown. Not that I think Republicans are really suffering on that. I think most people are blaming Democrats overall. But again, it is a distraction from everything negative happening in the country.
No, I agree with you, Michael. Listen, we'll move on. I did want to get that in there so the listeners and the viewers could know that we're on top of things.
Yeah.
Now, Michael, I want to move on to.
By the way, it wasn't a pardon; it's a commutation. So the difference there: pardon means you were never guilty in the first place, and you will hear the left misstate that and say he was pardoned. No, he had his sentence commuted, which means I don't have to serve the rest of the time.
Well, I know, Michael, I know I'm using the word commutes. I'm seeing it here. Commutes, prison sentence. But you're right. The distinction is important. The distinction, words matter. Words matter. Now, I want to move on. What looks like it happened. I did watch in the White House today with Zelensky arriving to meet with Trump to talk about various things as far as the conflict is doing, and
Tomahawks.
the whole big issue with tomahawks. And I think Zelensky was probably pissed, Michael, when he walked in knowing that Trump spoke for 2.5 hours with Putin yesterday. That must have concerned Zelensky a lot. But I am glad that, according to Zelensky and the White House, that as far as giving Ukraine access to these tomahawks could really be, as far as threat escalation and whatnot, the escalation, the ladder, as they say, could be a very dangerous thing. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little surprised that it was even introduced or talked about a week or two ago. But anyway, Zelensky left with his tail between his legs after Trump probably gave him, a real speech. And, I was saying this on the show last night, what should President Trump say to Zelensky? He should say to him, Zelensky, have some reasonable expectations here. You're not going to get everything back. That's just not going to happen. And introducing tomahawk weapons, and think about it, Michael, they're 1.6 million each. You're going to have more or less a NATO or American crew, at least initially. You're going to need a lot of assistance from the U.S. military. Do we really want to get in deeper and deeper and deeper? I know we're deep in this Ukrainian-Russian thing, but I think at this point, we should think about extracting ourselves, albeit probably slowly, because this has been catastrophic. I know you and I have discussed this over the last couple of months, the past year, about how catastrophic it has been for the Ukrainian people, and maybe to a lesser extent the Russian people, but they've obviously suffered a lot of casualties too. But it's the Ukrainian military and their civilian population that has borne the brunt of this. So I'd like to see something done. We're moving in the right direction, certainly before Christmas. But my question to Michael Vass is, do you see any substantial movement, let's say, for example, next week in Hungary, where Putin and Trump are going to meet? Do you see any breaking news coming out, Michael, or is this going to be a very slow process?
What the conversation with Zelensky today has no impact on what Trump and Putin are going to say next week. Never was. And part of the reason why Zelensky is upset that Trump was speaking to Putin for 2.5 hours the day before he showed up is because he's not important, because he's not critical to the peace deal, because Ukraine is losing. And I know there's a lot of people who are upset to hear that, and they've been upset to hear that. This is a war of attrition. Russia can outlast Ukraine. It's just pure math. It is empirical. And Russia knows it. So does the Ukraine. So does every other country in the world. The thing that holds off this war from becoming worse is that the United States has been so vehemently supporting Ukraine, their war effort. We're giving them the ammunition, the weapons, the training, some personnel, and a lot of the weapons. The tomahawks are meant to frighten Moscow, literally, because we can be able to shoot into Moscow.
They could be nuclear tipped also, Michael.
Well, no, that won't happen. We're not that crazy. We're not going to give them nuclear or chemical weapons to put on the tomahawks. It's a great publicity conversation, which gets public sentiment. The fear of that helps to motivate this and maybe get more pressure to Ukrainians and to Russians to go into a peace talk, but no one's going to do that. You let one tomahawk with the nuclear payload show up in Ukraine, Belarus will drop nuclear weapons instantly. And that's not even talking about Russia itself and their nuclear weapons. No, it turns into a nuclear conflict kind of like India and Pakistan dropping bombs on each other, which they want to do all the time, this would actually have it happen. We don't want that. No one wants that. It would destroy Europe. Talk about food crisis, it'd be ridiculous. So no one's going to do that. But it does mean that tomahawks could reach civilians deep into the interior of Russia. And it's a way for Zelensky to go back to his people and say, the fight's not over. We have support. We can push Russia into a peace deal. And that gives them credibility, or him credibility, to show up at the peace table. Because he can say, well, we have the tomahawks, and and Russia knows that we could be attacking deep into Russia, right at the Moscow, and they don't want that, so they came and decided to talk to me. That's good for him with his people. No one really believes that the United States wants to give them tomahawks. They're not going to have nukes on them. And Russia that would be an escalation, and then, of course, Russia could respond in kind. So we don't want to really do this. So what you're looking at is, and that's part of the conversation I think Putin would have had with Trump ahead of time. Yeah, I know you're going to say this publicly, and this gives Zelensky a way to get to the table, but you're not really going to do that. Because if you do, then I've got to increase the armament and weapons and possibly invade from Belarus, which is, by the way, for people who don't know, that's a country up in the northwest, above the Ukraine, part of the former Soviet Union. Just to have an idea of the geographics of it, the geography of it. So they border on them, and they would come in and they attack as well. And I'm sure that was the conversation. And I'm sure Trump was saying, I just want you at the peace table. Show up at the peace table. Don't make this something that actually needs.
Michael, do you ever find it odd? You have Putin and Trump meeting in Alaska a few months ago. Now you got Putin and Trump meeting again in Hungary next week. But you know who's not there? Zelensky, like you said before. So I mean, you were essentially saying in the last couple of minutes, Zelensky is a non-player.
Yeah, never was. He's not a factor. What's he going to say? Oh, we're losing, so you should give us what he has said. We're losing, so give us back everything we had.
That doesn't happen.
No, that's never going to happen. That is a stupid statement. Never, no war in the universe has ever had that happen. It's not going to happen in this one either. Russia is saying, we're going to keep everything that we got, and they're going to ask for more. Why? Because they're winning. And because they have the pressure and they have the leverage. What's the leverage that the Ukraine has? Nothing. That's why the United States is speaking to him, and he's not going to have a conversation and hasn't had a conversation. Nothing serious.
Michael, looking into the future, and it might be in the far future, when this does get resolved, settles down, or whatever, as far as the rebuilding of Ukraine, are we going to be like picking up most of the bill, or will that be distributed throughout the world, China, India, and Russia, and will everybody be chipping in? Who's going to be paying for the rebuilding?
We are. China, guaranteed China will not pay a single dime. They will refuse. Turkey will not pay a dime. They will refuse. You'll see the NATO countries are going to do exactly what they've always done. They will talk about giving some money. They will give a pittance, a couple of pennies on the dollar each, and then America will pay the bulk of it. And we get nothing for it. We get nothing for it. We won't have a better deal. We will get, because of the contract we've already signed for the rare earth minerals, we will get that. We will be able to have better trade with the Ukraine. We'll be exporting a lot of our raw materials to rebuild the infrastructure so that we can get to the raw minerals. So we have to do the mining. So we got to build roads. We got to build electrical plants. We have to build medical facilities. We have to have processing. So we're going to build up Ukraine in that way. So
Michael, make this make sense for me. Ukraine was never a national security issue. I don't believe it's not part of NATO. Why did we get involved up to our neck in it, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, which Zelensky and his cronies are probably pocketing in a lot of it? What was our interest, or such an overwhelming interest that we had to drop a couple hundred billion in it?
Because Biden hates Putin, and unlike Obama, who said Russia is not a factor, Biden knows that they were a factor. They are a real threat. Not on the same level as China, which has emerged to be the global threat, but a regional threat, absolutely. And Russia was gaining leverage over the EU, in particular Germany, which is the financial engine of the EU, because as they decided to go green with renewable energy,
yes,
they were dependent on getting gas from Russia. And because they were dependent on getting gas from Russia, Russia was gaining more and more power. When Putin, who he's always wanted the Ukraine. We knew this back in 2013 when he got the Crimea, thanks to Obama, because Obama didn't think there was a threat, because Obama wasn't thinking long term. What has Russia always wanted? And this is going back 700 years. Food, uranium, strategic position. That's what the Ukraine is for Russia, always has been. And that's what they're fighting for. And now we have rare earth metals added in. So that's what they've been fighting for. That's what Putin has taken. That's what he always wanted. And if he can get more, he'll take more. But that's what he wanted. That's the minimum he wanted to get, and he's got it. So he did that because Biden was weak. That goes back to Afghanistan. There is a chain of events here. The left don't like to bring it up because it makes them look bad. The chain of events in this scenario starts with Biden runs away from the Taliban, who are now, by the way, fighting with Pakistan. Different story. But he ran away from the Taliban and gave the Taliban a military. He gave them light tanks and helicopters, small arms, ammunition, and money. He gave them legitimacy. And he ran away. Just jumping on. Ran away, just shoving people into C-130s and flying them out, running as fast as he could. It was embarrassing. And it was a display of absolute abject weakness. He didn't have the intestinal fortitude to have an organized retreat. He didn't have enough time to destroy our equipment, our essential items. You can't move all the trucks, blow them up. Air Force Base, destroy it.
Would you subscribe? Then President Trump, what you're saying is essentially cleaning up the mess that Biden and his cronies and his whole installed White House regime did, not just in Afghanistan, which was, as you're saying, that was a complete debacle. But, as far as letting in millions of people, sometimes flying them in, illegals, into our country, and then giving them stipends and driver's license, and if you're in California, health insurance. President Trump is busy just trying to right all those wrongs, along with, and this is another question I was going to ask you, Mike. We might as well jump to it now. As far as the lawfare, I know we're jumping forward here. As far as what we've seen in the last couple of weeks with the likes of Comey, and then we have the guy Bolton indicted. Michael, are you satisfied with the speed of prosecutions that Pam Bondi's office is doing? Should it be, we're 8 or 9 months into the second term here with President Trump? Should this be expedited? Do you think it's moving quick enough? Because we still got to get to Clapper and Brennan. I mean, there's a lot of deep state parasites they still have to get to. And if I can follow that up, I know it's a lot of here. Should we be prosecuting them individually, or should be type of a RICO situation? Would that be more effective?
Okay. First thing, yes, Trump is cleaning up the mess, not of Biden, of Obama. When we started to transform our nation was 2008 going into 2009. That was the promise. What we weren't promised is or explained was, what are we transforming into? We now see the consequences of that transformation. We now see what that transformation is into. Basically, the Democratic Socialists of America. It's to make America more socialist and more weak, more divided. So that's Obama and Biden combined. This is what as the 47th president, and when he was the 45th, it was just Obama. 47th, it's Obama and Biden. That's what he's trying to fix. So that answers that question there. And it is wide ranging. In terms of punishment, and we should look at this exactly as it is. See, we've heard about Letitia James. We're hearing about James Comey, now Bolton. And the left is saying, well, it's revenge. Yeah, but here's the underlying and the most important question. Did they commit the crime? See, if they committed the crime, then you can't say it's just revenge. They committed a crime.
Right.
They should be punished. And the fact that they're high-ranking Democrats, they're elected officials, is meaningless. They're American citizens. They committed a crime. They should be tried. And if they are found guilty, they must be punished. And because they have such high levels, because some of them are elected, then they should be punished with extreme prejudice because of that lack of that abuse of the public trust and abuse of power that they had. So Letitia James in particular, we have the signed documents. That's public information. We know she did sign these documents. We know that does violate New York law. She is complicit in a crime. She should be punished for that. Same thing with Adam Schiff, who did a very similar thing. James Comey lied, or at least this is the allegation, is he lied on the record to the public, which we believe is very clear. He may have other crimes in addition to that.
Yes.
I believe he does, like abusing the power of the government to spy on private citizens. That is another crime, and he should be tried for that. That is the way the system is supposed to be, because if I did those things, either what Letitia James or Adam Schiff or James Comey did, you and I and any other regular American would be in a courtroom right now, and they'd probably be convicting us. Let's be very clear about that. John Bolton had secret documents, just like Joe Biden, who had documents for 4 decades, just like Hillary Clinton, who destroyed subpoenaed evidence. They should be held accountable. We didn't do it as the 45th, do it now as the 47th. John Bolton, if he didn't have that secret information, he's got no problem. Go into the courtroom, prove that is not the case, you win, over. Then if you want to say it's revenge, then say, yeah, well, see, I was completely innocent. That was just revenge. I'll believe you then. But until then, any other American citizen with the same accusation would be indicted. In fact, they would be hauled in front of cameras, arrested, hauled with their hands cuffed behind their back, and everyone getting pictures of them in the mugshot. That's what everyone else.
Michael, let me stop you right there. As far as the treatment's concerned, Comey comes in the back door there, the Eastern District Court of Virginia, leaves, doesn't get to see any of the press. Steve Bannon happened to be watching it that morning. Bannon had Peter Navarro on. Those guys were, in the case of Navarro, shackled, and Bannon was saying once he was in there, they shackled him too. And keep in mind, Michael, Steve Bannon and Navarro, those were misdemeanors, okay? Mr. Comey is being charged with 2 felonies, and he gets to hop around and just, runs in and runs out. He's not in shackles or anything like that. It's I mean, if I was Bannon Navarro, I'd be pretty pissed off about Comey's treatment, the glove hands and their heavy-handed treatment.
Yeah, but it's the reason why you don't hear more complaint about that is because there's already this umbrella of it's revenge. And we saw instantly, as soon as Trump got in power, we were told on the same day, oh, Trump's going to be going for revenge. They already set up the arena and the stage that any action that would investigate and also enforce the law and prosecute crimes was about revenge. This way, that if any action is taken, and the more action, the more vigorous an action taken that would normally happen to anyone else is going to be seen, and it's going to bias everyone. And that'll be a negative towards the Trump administration. Do I think each and every one of them should have been in handcuffs, led in front of the public into because they've been indicted as they come in? Absolutely. And should the media have been able to ask them questions when they came out, when they got their bail, which, by the way, you and I could not get? We would not get the same bail reform treatment. We would be in jail. But they're getting the bail reform. They're, by the way, also not giving up their passports, because each and every one of them could escape to other countries.
That's true.
Are a flight risk to other countries, but they didn't have to turn in their passports. They should have. Because they would make me do that. They would make you do that. They would make the audience do that. That being said, should the media have been able to confront them and ask questions of them? Absolutely. The media didn't want to. I guarantee you they knew it was leaked. Guaranteed. Everything else is leaked in Washington, D.C. Every other major politician, it's leaked. You know when they're going to or from some kind of arrest or something like a mugshot. You know about it ahead of time. They didn't want to cover it because they have a vested interest in this, and they need to hold up that staged imagery of this is revenge, because they have to look good in the 2026 elections. This is about 2026. We're already in the 2026 campaign cycle. The public is talking about, oh, what's going to happen in November? That's for the public. Joe Average is worried about 2025. Politicos, we're all talking about 2026.
Right.
Setting that environment. And that's why we're seeing the things play out in this manner. I think that kind of answers your second and third question.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. You covered it. You covered it. Michael, we just want to see. It's amazing. You mentioned Letitia James too, and I just remember her when she was running and all. She's just going to build her whole career on Trump, and no one is above the law. And now you say that now, and the left goes ballistic on you. They're saying, "Oh no, this is retribution," like you were saying. But I think this is justified, and what you did say, Michael, is valid. If they'd committed crimes, hey man, you got to go to jail like anybody else. But my next question to you, Michael, where the jurisdiction, Eastern District of Virginia, if they, and I don't know if they could do this, I'm not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer, but if they transfer the trial to D.C., then Comey and Bolton and his pals are going to walk.
Probably, but they don't necessarily have to transfer it. They're going to try. It will be more friendly for them. The judges will be definitely more on their side because, again, look at the region that it's in. I am very much against. My reason for not going to D.C. and why it should never be allowed to go to D.C. D.C. isn't a city. D.C. has no rights, and it's not supposed to have any rights. It was created to be a dead neutral zone in terms of politics. No one's supposed to be living there. No one is allowed to vote there. You're on purpose. It was in the Constitution. They did that because they didn't want any one state or any one city to have too much power. They knew that if you had people living there, they had the ability to vote. It would abuse the system. Mm-hmm. It would allow corruption to come in. This is true not just only for voting, it's true for judicial actions. A judge, a courtroom, a trial like this would be unbalanced in D.C. because of all the politics surrounding it. Therefore, we should not have, especially political trials in D.C. because it's not a city.
Well, Michael, then how come they were batting 1,000 on J6 convictions? Is that because what you're saying? Well, they were all done in D.C. Those convictions, they weren't tried in other courts.
And it was a biased system. And remember, many of the prosecutors, the government's prosecutors under the Biden-Harris administration, did not want to charge the J6 victims with the crimes that Biden was asking for because they were unjustified. They were not realistic. And so they pushed to overcharge people on things that really didn't apply to them. Everyone got charged with assault. People didn't. We know for a fact we've seen 4,000 hours of video. No, that's a handful of people. We're talking about 24 people versus what, 40, 50, 100,000 people. Not the same. Not the same. You can't charge them all with violent crimes because they didn't commit violent crimes. We know that the Eastern
Michael, they were misdemeanors.
were wide open.
The majority of them were misdemeanors, like misdemeanor trespass or something like that.
Yes, it was trespassing, which is normally across the country.
Michael, should the J6ers be should the J6ers be compensated for the time that they served?
Some of them. To be fair, some of them. There are individuals who went 2 years and never got charged with a crime, but they were in solitary confinement. That deserves compensation until they got the commutation and the pardon from President Trump. I was sitting in a jail cell, and I may have, as we know some of them were invited in by Capitol Police officers, doors wide open, and they just walked within the boundaries through the halls of Congress and left the building. Some of them in 15 minutes. Or they were escorted. Many people were escorted to the floor of Congress by police officers, including the shaman, who were escorted there by he had 6 police officers he interacted with that escorted him to the floor of Congress. Yeah, he's got a case. That should be compensated for. So those cases, yes, but there are a handful. I think it's about a dozen people who were violent. Violent in terms of property damage, that they correctly were charged with that crime, and they were punished for that crime. I had no problem. Those people, absolutely.
Michael, that is I know, but it's such a small percentage, and I understand, and I agree with that. But Michael, think about how about the 6, 7, or 8 or 10 people that committed suicide while they were awaiting trials or whatever they were waiting for. I mean, should their families be compensated?
Yes.
It was really terrible when you think about it.
Well, yes, because that was public persecution and destruction of that individual, their credibility, their livelihood, their lifestyle. They were on display for the entire nation. They were scapegoated as these evil, vicious, violent terrorists, and they're not. And that rumor, that perception still exists to this day amongst some Democrats. The further left you are, the more you tend to believe that, even though all evidence is showing that's not true. It's not accurate. It's just propaganda, but people believe propaganda. So people who've been affected by that, yes. So it's very much a case-by-case decision. It's not a blanket. I do believe the overwhelming number of cases do deserve some amount of compensation.
Ashley Babbitt, Michael, Ashley Babbitt's family was compensated, right?
I don't think they have. That was private. Private individuals donated to her, not the government.
I thought the husband brought a lawsuit against the federal government.
As far as I know, that at least as I recall, that has not gone through. So that may be pending, but I don't recall it actually going through. I know public donated to the family, and that they should. But again, and the answer to someone like Ashley Babbitt, look at the full 7-minute video, not the minute and a half that the news media put out for the public, which is the end of that 7-minute video. Look at the full 7-minute video. It shows you, and it is documented, it is a fact. It is not my opinion. This is held by the Congress, the full video, and it shows in 7 minutes that room was controlled by Capitol Police. The Capitol Police exited the room. Then that crowd got a little agitated. That's when another Capitol Police officer pulled his firearm, aimed and shot Ashley Babbitt, and then the Capitol Police returned into that room. The evidence shows all of that. They manufactured that event. It was not real. It was not substantive. This should never have happened. And yeah, her family should be compensated because of that.
Yeah, it's such a
I'm still with you.
a desperate situation. I had Jack Cashel, who did a book on Ashley Babbitt and 10 women that were in prison after that. Some of them grandmothers, with clean records, and you have the FBI coming to their house, arresting them, and then they have to go to Washington. And I think you may have mentioned it too, Michael. This would obviously would bankrupt you when you're going against the power of the state and the way how zealous Biden and his crew was, the DOJ, Merrick Garland, them against just average citizens. And don't get me wrong, Michael, the people that did go in, I know a lot of them were just taking selfies and whatnot. I never went in there, but there were people that were jailed that never entered the building, like
Yeah.
Owen Schroyer, who was outside, and they convicted him and said, "Well, you were drumming the crowd up to go in." I didn't really see any evidence of that, even from his language. So there was certainly an overzealous portion of it from the Biden regime. And Michael, I don't know if you saw a day or two ago Nancy Pelosi incident where a young reporter asked about why didn't she bring in the National Guard for January 6th. She was in charge ultimately of the security there that day, and she just starts shouting back at the young reporter, "Shut up, shut up." I mean, it was I guess the real Nancy Pelosi, Michael. She kind of she let the guard down, and that was the real Nancy. What unfortunately this young reporter was on the receiving end of.
Well, the fact is, she does not want the public to acknowledge and remember that we have video evidence from Nancy Pelosi's staff of her in the limousine on January 6th, admitting that she made a bad call in the way that she ordered the National Guard to be organized and deployed, because she had control, not President Trump. Nancy Pelosi had all rights and control by law over the National Guard, how it was deployed, and what their orders were. So that's all on her. People forget that, we've never deployed the National Guard. The National Guard was deployed, and it was under control of Nancy Pelosi in D.C. This is not unusual. And they're like, we could put them in. She chose not to. She could have deployed the National Guard at any time that day. She chose not to. And I'm actually glad she didn't, because it would have made it worse, because those were unarmed American citizens, and we didn't need troops to go against them. They dispersed. Took a little while, but they dispersed on their own, peacefully, because they weren't trying to take over the government.
No, I understand.
They were, you would not have stopped them.
Michael, if I can get back to Nancy Pelosi, one of my favorite ex-people that I go after quite frequently. How do you get to the point that, like Nancy Pelosi, and be worth $203 million?
Insider trading, a lot of it.
And you think that's widespread, not just with Democrats, but some Republicans as well, AOC and others, even the race here in Jersey, right next to me, with Mikey, all of a sudden going from 350 to $7 or $8 million, and she was asked during a live debate, and she did not have an answer for it. Are these people just like really good with money, or is it absolutely insider trading?
It's insider trading, and it's a perk of having such a high office. You can't do that if you're a councilman in the local town. You're not going to have access to that. But we're talking about high-ranking federal and leadership of states. They have access to information and to access financial systems that average American citizens don't, and they take advantage of it. We know that Nancy Pelosi, for much of the green energy wave of the Obama administration, she owned over $250,000 of wind energy stock. I forget which wind energy company it was. People can look it up for themselves. But it is a known fact. She was a proponent not only of green energy, but of wind. What a strange thing that she, just before she started saying wind energy is the best renewable energy, and we should be compensating these wind energy companies, subsidizing them, she happened to own a wind energy stock. It was a blind purchase by her broker. She didn't know anything about it. That's a lie. Of course, the broker knew about it. I used to be a broker. I know for a fact. Well, I can speculate for a fact that, yeah, her broker knew. He got the word ahead of time. He told his top clients, and they all got to own that stock. As she then appeared on Congress saying, I've got a bill for renewable energy, and we're going to help the wind energy companies. And
Michael, why does this continue? Pelosi, AOC, Omar, Mikey, over in New Jersey. Why does it continue unabated? Is it the swamp is going to say, you know what, this like are you saying this is our perk here in the swamp, and nobody's going to take it away from us?
well, it's not just Democrats. In terms of the insider trading, it is establishment. All of the establishment know that this has existed, and this is a loophole in the system. This is an abuse of the system that Republicans and Democrats all use. They've been doing it for decades upon decades. Everyone's aware of it. It's just unspoken, unidentified, it's unaddressed. Every couple of years, you have somebody come up, and some young idealistic new person into Congress comes up and says, I want to have a bill about insider trading. They get to shout and scream, and they get a re-election. They get a bunch of donors behind them because they're the new energy, and they're going to fix the establishment. And it dies, and no one talks about it anymore, but it diffuses the subject so that the public don't talk about it. Because it's, see, we were just talking about, I'm trying to fight to get it through there. You got to re-elect me next year, and re-elect my good friend in this other state as well, and we're going to fight about this again in 10 years when we need to diffuse and distract people about that once again. It's a moneymaker. No one's going to.
No, I got you, Michael. Let's get to a decision, or sorry, a topic that a lot of Americans are still thinking about, concerned about. Sure, certainly Chucky Schumer and his pals. I'm talking about the shutdown, and I read a data today, Michael, that it's costing $15 billion a day each day of this shutdown. Now, I look at Hakeem Jeffries' X feed every day, and he's out there, pretending he's mad as hell if they don't get back. If we don't, open up the government again. Michael, do you see this as a protracted situation in that sense? I mean, 30, 40, 50, 60 days, number one.
Yes.
Number two, when you had a few months back with Elon Musk and Doge, at the end of the day here, if this extends 2 months, will the Trump administration be able to get all these layoffs, which will become permanent? Do you think this was all part of the plan? Have Democrats, have they really stepped in it this time also?
It wasn't, well, to answer your questions, it's not a plan, but it is taking advantage of an opportunity
Okay.
to achieve the goal that they wanted anyway, shrink the government. We've already had many people, and it was already fought in the courts, but many people decided to take the buyout package.
Yeah.
Is going to increase inflation, unemployment. I've talked about this for months now. We knew this back in February, that people who were getting out would increase the number of people unemployed, but many of those people have packages, and they're not unemployed like you and me being out of a job. Not quite the same. Many early retirements and such. But that wasn't enough. We didn't shrink the government enough. This gives the opportunity to shrink the government even more into departments that weren't, where people were like, no, I want to stay in this department because I can stay here forever, like the Department of Education. They'll stay there forever. Why would they leave? They'll just make, $300,000 a year for pushing paper. Why would you leave that? Unless you are bored or you want a vacation somewhere, they'll stay forever. Well, now this is an opportunity to get rid of them, which is under dispute with the Supreme Court. I think the court is going to say, yes, the president has the right, as the commander-in-chief, as the chief executive, which means he gets to direct the money.
Yes.
Congress allocated the money. He gets to use it, that allocation. And that allocation allows him to fire people. So, yeah, I think they're going to be fired. They should be. I think the Supreme Court will make that decision. The left will hate it because it's bad for them and their unions, which are their major donors, but it is correct according to the Constitution. This is going to last until, I believe, roughly, I have said it will be about the 31st, the end of the month, is where I think you will see Democrats fold. I know there's been a rumor that Schumer had a plan and it's been leaked, and that they were waiting for some point after the No Kings March tomorrow, which is crap. But they needed that event. This was meant to, they thought they would have more momentum, so that would be good for the No Kings March, to make it seem like they're winning, to seem like they have strength, that Trump is weak, which will help them in, this is their October surprise, to help their 2025 elections and to give them momentum in 2026. So that kind of also falls in line with what I expect, with October 31st being roughly the day, give or take, when we're going to see this actually end. They've made their point, they had their protest, they've got some momentum amongst their diehard voters anyway. They've achieved everything they can truly achieve, and then they're going to give up.
Michael, how did they miscalculate to this extent? And I'll be honest, I'm surprised, because usually with the legacy media on the Democrat side, that they'd be losing the PR game to this extent. And I think to myself, wow, Mike Johnson is standing strong with this, but I'm sure it's President Trump that's leaning on him big time, saying this is the way we're going. We're going to win this. But Michael, it's still is the primary stumbling block, as far as the Democrats see it, is the not funding the health care for illegals, or these subsidies for the health benefits end at the end of the year. And the only reason they lasted that long is because somehow with the COVID stimulus and all that, they were able to be extended. But the Democrats want that to go on indefinitely then for health benefits.
You're talking about Obamacare, which I've covered in depth.
Yes.
Since 2010, I've been covering it in depth. Obamacare has never been fully activated because it's a failed idea. It's broken. It doesn't work. It has never worked. If it did work, then it wouldn't need government subsidies. It doesn't work. And if you take away the government pumping it up, it would fail on its face. And everyone who's actually been honest about it and looked at it, and especially all the insurance companies, they'll tell you in a heartbeat, without the subsidies, this completely fails. They can't live with that failure. So Democrats have to keep funding it, and they have been continuing to fund it, the subsidies, even though the prices are still going up, and they have always gone up. Obamacare has failed in every promise that was ever made about it, from you're going to keep your doctor to it would give you all the same medical choices that you had before, and it was going to hold down the price. None of that's true. None of that has ever been true. But they get to blame it on Trump now. So they absolutely will be fighting for that. That is going to be their compromise point. They have to get that. They're not going to get, most likely they won't get it in this argument. After the government reopens, they'll have the conversation. They'll get the continuation of the funding, because it's good for insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies, and those are major donors for left and right. So that's what you're probably going to see. In terms of illegal aliens, that's the point that Trump, not just Trump, the Republicans and the right-wing establishment, it's a good talking point for them, and it's good for America. Luckily, it goes both ways. And that's why they're standing so strong, because it's good for America. We don't need to spend money on illegal aliens that aren't supposed to be here, and it's part of the mandate of having the mass deportations. People voted to get rid of them. That means also getting rid of their health care, paying their bills. Yeah. They're not supposed to be here. Get out of our country. And it also reduces the number of illegal aliens coming into America, because we're not going to give you health care. It's one of the reasons some of these illegals come. So now they know, even if they were to get in, they're not going to get the reward that they were getting under the Biden-Harris administration. They're still not going to get health care. So it reduces the impetus, the reasoning for coming to America, because they have fewer and fewer benefits, and they are criminals, and they will get deported. This is a system to proactively keep down the number of illegal aliens entering into America. And it's been very effective. We're down 93% of the number of illegal aliens entering America.
Michael, this is a good point. If I
Mhm.
can just stop you there about the
Yeah.
illegal aliens, and I listened to everything you said about the Obamacare, and that's all. We need to get that out here. Do you subscribe to what Homan and others are saying? And I hope this is true, that over 2.2 million illegals have either left the country through self-deportation or some portion of the mass deportations. Do those numbers seem pretty accurate to you?
Pretty much, yeah. There's been a lot of illegals who are self-deporting for a lot of reasons. One of them being that if we force them out, now we have a record of them. If they come back in, it's easier to find them and easier to get rid of them again permanently.
Michael, do you think it's a good thing to see that 150,000 people apply for new ICE positions? Is that almost kind of like a sense of patriotism is sweeping the nation again? That people want to. I know there's incentives like a $50,000 bonus, but is that a good thing to see that people want to jump in and save our country ultimately?
Short term, yes. Long term, no. Because let's assume that we get reasonable. No one expects, and it's unrealistic to expect that we're going to get rid of all the illegal aliens. It was never meant to do that.
Right.
The goal is to bring down the number to something that is manageable, which would be closer to 20 to 30 million illegal aliens instead of the 50 to 60 that are in due to the both Obama and Biden-Harris. We ballooned far, far too quickly for our country to absorb them and to integrate and destroy our infrastructure. We could not accept that. So we've got to bring that number back down closer to the 20 million mark, which is manageable and our system can deal with. Again, still a crime, still a problem, still should deport them, but at least we'd be able to manage the system and live with it. And I think that's the goal. So if we're doing that, I don't know. It's ICE agents. Once we get to that 20 million mark, will we need, or even if we get down to 30 million from 50 to 60 and we get it down to like 30, we're going to have a bunch of people in ICE we don't need. It should be clear. It should be made clear. This is a temporary position. You're not going to be here for the next 50 years. This is something that, with all luck, and if there's any efficiency to this, within 5 to 10 years, you're going to have to retire or be fired because we won't need you. And I think if we do that, that's a good thing.
No, I got you. Now, Michael, listen, I did want to ask you this a while back, and I want to separate this question, the Gaza 20-point peace plan. I want you to put that aside just for a second.
Don't let us forget. I do want to talk about my favorite Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and how she screwed up yet again. But go ahead.
No, we're going to get to that right after this. So make sure you remember that. Okay, we saw, and we hope that the peace plan where President Trump, went to Israel and Egypt last week and signed, a kind of an agreement with different Arab and Muslim countries and Israel. Put that aside for a second. I'm asking you a question about the 2028 and Marco Rubio and his position within the Trump administration in national politics now. He's Secretary of State. So my question to Michael Vass is, has Marco Rubio lifted himself up in stature, and will he be looked at closely as J.D. Vance would be as far as a potential 2028 presidential candidate? Has he raised his standing up?
One, Marco Rubio is a contender for the presidency by the mere fact that he's run before. He ran in 2016, and he had some support, more than Kamala Harris. He was actually a real contender. He was up until I think the final 5. He was running, and he was still a factor in the race, along with Ted Cruz. So they are legitimate contenders for 2028 alongside J.D. Vance. So he's going to be on the stage or at least expected to be on the stage, no matter what.
Right.
I do not believe his work as a part of the thing. One of the reasons why I think he accepted to work as Secretary of State instead of remaining a senator is this gives him even more credibility in terms of executive management at the highest levels of our government to be a vice president or president. And I think he's more likely to be a vice president and then president, not just move up. Because being Secretary of State has not, as of yet, and then we've only gone 9 months, but as of this moment, he has not done something outstanding enough to elevate him. He's competent, he's been effective and efficient, but he has not been outstanding. His visibility hasn't risen with the American people. They still know him, and they know him mostly as senator. They don't really know him as a Secretary of State. He hasn't had a plan, a discussion, a negotiation, an interaction internationally where he's been able to stand out. Like Hamas, great deal. We know a lot about Steve Woodcock. Woodcock was very much involved. So was Rubio, but it was the Trump plan. It was a Trump 20-point plan. It was the threat of Donald Trump. It was the actions taking on Iran and blowing up their nuclear facilities that put all of the pieces in place so that the conversations they were having, they had stalled. Much like we see with Ukraine and Russia. They stalled. Trump walked away for a while, said, okay, great. You don't want to listen to me? Fantastic. Deal with the consequence. The consequence for Hamas was more people died, as they knew they would. He came back. He blew up the nuclear facilities on Iran, said, I'm serious. Take this serious. Talk to my people. They talked to his people. He put out the 20-point plan. Hamas said, you know what? We're going to be overthrown by our own people. Before that happens, we'll agree to the plan, go in, kill all the leaders of the opposition to Hamas, kill them as fast as possible, maintain their power base, and plan to try and genocide Israel another day. And that's what happened. Where did you hear Rubio's name in the middle of that? Or even Steve Woodcock? Nowhere.
Well, Michael, I know you're not. Michael, listen, I have to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
I know you're not saying this. It almost seems like Rubio, I don't think Trump would tell him, like, hey, listen, you're going to have to kind of remain in the background. I realize you're Secretary of State. We're going to have to let J.D. Vance take and when I think of newsworthy stuff here, you know, before I ask you this question, now I'm thinking about it as you're talking. J.D. Vance was in Germany a few weeks back saying, you got to do something about this censorship. You got to do something about this migration. Europe is destroying itself. Why are you putting people in jail for social memes? J.D. Vance is like all over the place, and not just internationally, domestically. And I do agree with you, Michael. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really think about it until you laid it out there that Rubio has been in the background. You gotta have like a signature move or a signature deal where you can come to the and well, he still has some time, Michael. Let's face it, we're only 9 months into it. But if based on his actions now, if you were to gauge it, J.D. Vance is much ahead of the pack here, as opposed to him. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Track. But I think what you're seeing with Marco Rubio is he's on a fast track for vice president, which then leads into a presidential run. I think he's more in line with that. And I think J.D. Vance, and again, we're talking about 9 months. That may change in 2 years. But right now, if I had to call it, you're looking at J.D. Vance because he has been so active and so supportive. Two important things as a comparison to Kamala Harris. Everywhere she went, internationally, the United States had worse public relations or international relations than before she showed up. Everywhere after, when J.D. Vance is gone, even when they don't like what he said, we're not in worse.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
So that's what I think happens there.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. I know, Michael, people would say, like, you know, what's Michael Vass and MatthewJ talking about 2028 for? But I know time rolls by. What I forgot to, Michael, what I forgot to ask you before you get to the Brown situation is and I think you maybe even covered it. You don't see even a protracted government shutdown affecting the midterms any way, shape, or form.
Not really. The average person at this point don't care. The very, very, very small portion of people who care about this, mostly government workers, they care about it a little bit. But mind you, Trump is making sure that the military is getting paid. Certain essential positions, regardless of whether they're working or not, they're getting
ICE, TSA, they're getting paid.
Yeah, the CDC, they're getting paid. So certain key positions, they're getting paid. So you have a very small, relative to the government overall, there's a small group of people who may be very upset. They'll blame Trump and they'll vote against him. Everyone else is basically neutral. Their opinion hasn't changed. And in terms of the majority of American citizens, overwhelmingly, and understand, again, small segment of America so far has been affected. Very small. We're talking about 5%. And 95% of America you wouldn't know. There's nothing indicating that the government is shut down. Who cares? We've gone through 11 of these. And we now have this pattern set up that we're going to see one every other year at this point.
Right.
I expect to shut down every other year because it's political theory.
But Michael, we had, and you're in my age bracket. Didn't the Reagan administration? There were 6 shutdowns during his administration. 6.
Yeah.
So it's nothing unusual. So you're saying minimal, if not nothing, political impact that the American people will just move on once this is resolved.
They already have. It's not a factor for them. And by the end of October, beginning of November, that's when it probably will start to affect real Americans, the majority of America. And even then, I don't think it would be very significant until you get to about the middle, if not the end of November. So until we get into that range, which puts us 45 to 60 days in, then we're going to see a big substantive difference. But at this point, no one cares.
That's good. I'm glad I got your analysis on that, Michael. Now, what did you want to discuss? You wanted to bring up Ketanji Brown, right?
Yeah.
Ketanji Brown.
Supreme Court. She's such a brilliant, wonderful addition to the Supreme Court in terms of being a DEI hire. She is a DEI hire. And I put out a short video about it. People are pissed at me about this. You can't say that she's qualified. No, she's not. You said she's stupid. I didn't say she's stupid. Got nothing to do qualify.
Michael, just so everybody knows, did you put that on your YouTube channel or your X channel?
My YouTube channel.
Okay.
It's on my YouTube. No Soundbites allowed. It's on my channel. And people are like, but you're saying she's stupid. No. I said she's unqualified. Not that she's stupid. She can be brilliant. She could have, I don't know, Einstein level IQ. She doesn't, but she could. And she could still be unqualified, which means she doesn't know how to do the job. And she doesn't. She's an activist, not a Supreme Court justice. Now, I bring that all up because you may not, it sounds like you didn't follow this. Right now, the Supreme Court is hearing arguments for the second time, which means this is very serious. They're looking to break precedents. The Voting Rights Act, which is basically an offshoot of the Civil Rights Act in terms of voting, making sure that minorities are able to access the vote. And that has played out in terms of the redistricting, that race is a component in each district that's made across the country. Usually smaller and more important for the South than pretty much anywhere else in the country. So they're hearing this case and they're hearing it for a second time, which means it tends to mean that they're planning to overturn prior legislation, prior decisions by the Supreme Court on this, which means they're going to say it's racist or it's ineffective, either way, and they'll get rid of it. Ketanji did 2 things that I think are of note. One, unlike any other Supreme Court justice, she blatantly and directly told one of the litigants, the government, that your case is wrong. I don't like it. And I feel like race, in this case, the argument is in Louisiana, they have one district that is mostly black people.
Right.
Black people are 30% of the population in Louisiana. They're 30% of the voting bloc, not registered voters, I should say, registered voters in Louisiana. So number of registered voters matches the population density. So they have one district out of 6. And the Democrats are saying, no, there should be 2 districts because that would be 1/3 of all the districts. So you have to have another district because they're black, not because they're underrepresented, not because they're denied the ability to vote. It's because they're black. That's racist. Ketanji says, literally, she said to one of the litigants, "You're wrong. This is racial. They are black. They should have an extra district." Essentially, I'm paraphrasing. That's insane. I've never seen a Supreme Court justice. Many of them have made up their mind about various cases, abortion, gun rights, all kinds of things. But they never said, "You're wrong. You don't understand the case. I disagree with you." They've never said that. They ask questions like, is it constitutional or not? They have a feeling. I don't care what their feelings are. They're Supreme Court justices. I want to hear about the constitutionality of the law, not your feeling. I don't care what you feel, because that's not what you're there for. But that is what an activist would say. An activist, and especially an activist judge, would say, "Oh, but I feel." I don't care about your feelings. Ketanji's about, I feel. That's embarrassing. She doesn't know how to be a judge. She knows how to be an activist. The second thing she did is, in describing this and justifying her answer that, well, they're black, so they should get an extra district. Not that it's actually valid. There's no physical proof. It's not like someone's being denied anything. They're giving them something purely because of the color of their skin, which is, again, racist. Her answer is, well, the Supreme Court has decided, and I love this, that in the past, we have to have special treatment for people today, even though in the past we didn't. And her reference is, well, disabled people. You have to have, like, for wheelchairs, you have to have ramps to go up into upstairs, even though in the past that wasn't a law, it wasn't required, because we didn't think of it as being discriminating against disabled people, but we do now. And so that's why we have to give these black people an extra congressional district, because they're disabled. And we're denying them a right. She called black people disabled.
It's crazy, Michael. It's crazy. And if I could, I'm listening to every word you're saying. Now, this is still obviously going through the court. What do you envision happens here, Michael? A 6-3 or a 5-4 decision? And how do you see the outcome of this?
No, it'll be 6-3. It'll be a 6-3 decision. Conservatives versus the liberal judges. We already know where Ketanji Brown Jackson, whatever it is, KBJ. We already know where she stands.
Yeah.
We know why she stands there, because she's an activist and she's a racist. By her words, by the meaning of her words, by the blatantness of her words. She's a activist racist, DEI hire, and we now know where she stands. So we know that that's one vote out. I don't care about her. So it's going to be the other 2 liberal judges probably trying to cite the Civil Rights Act, that we haven't become a post-racial America, even though we were promised and told that we were after Obama. Suddenly that no longer matters, and that's no longer real, even though in my lifetime I can guarantee you we are less racial than we were in the 1970s. That's a fact. It's just that kids today don't know the difference, and they're being.
No, I agree with that. Michael, if I could just push it along to, how is this going to affect the next elections? If this Supreme Court decision goes our way, like you're saying, probably 6-3, how is that it's got to do big things for us? I mean, the Democrats, that's why they're really kicking up a lot of dust about this.
Democrats lose 19 House seats. Republicans pick up 19 House seats.
This is a big, big deal then if it goes our way.
Yeah, it's a massive. It is, at this point, almost insurmountable for Democrats to overcome.
So, Michael, even if Gavin gets his way out in California with I think it's redistricting again, that doesn't really come into play here if he wins?
He would lose seats because of this. He would act because of the way the restructuring. Again, this is every nation. We see it mostly in the South, but it's every state. Yeah, he would still lose. You're looking at, instead of losing, if they redistrict, he's looking to try and pick up 4 Republican seats. And in fact, he would probably only be able to get 1 or 2. He'd lose half his position, would walk out the door because of this.
No, I got you. Now, Michael, I want to discuss, if you don't mind, for a few minutes here, because it's happening tomorrow. And I know a lot of us are saying, okay, Michael Vass, it's going to be a nothing burger. And I don't want any violence or anything like that. I can remember, Michael, a few months back when they had this big thing, and the epicenter was supposedly here in Philadelphia. And I did happen to drive past it, and I noticed that the breakup of the people were like middle age. I didn't see an overly young crowd there. Do you think that's what we're going to see tomorrow across the country? Or do you think, based on the recent past couple months, with what has been transpiring in Chicago and out in Portland and other places, Los Angeles, that they may feel more compelled? I know we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the show, but I am a little concerned that something could be going down. Like when you see Chucky Schumers of the world, Michael, going out there and saying, "Hey, listen, everybody, this has got to be peaceful. Everybody's got to, stay calm about this." I almost think like they'll do the opposite. Doesn't matter what Schumer says. There's an element there, and I know you talk about it a lot. I talk about it a lot. That really, the wacky progressive wing, and of course you've got other elements there coming in. Antifa elements and people that just want to stir the people that have been attacking ICE. Those are the kind of things that if they show up at these, No Kings rally, that potentially we be concerned about that.
Okay, not as much as not as much as what we're seeing in Portland and Chicago, because these are going to be paid protesters. The first No Kings event, which was in June, was mostly by paid protesters. There was a lot of coverage at the time that most of the people going out were paid protesters, and the estimates of who actually showed up is way overestimated, as we have seen. That overcounted. When Republicans do something, it's undercounted. Democrats do it, it's overcounted almost every single time. And they're trying to build up to 11%. They can't afford to pay for crowds to get to 11%. Only about 2 million people is what they can get to, maybe. So you're going to see they did that in June, and remember, in July 17th to be exact, that was the second No Kings March.
Yeah.
The media doesn't want to talk about that anymore. They're denying it now. You can look it up. You can see it from the BBC has an article on it. Someone else has covered it. We knew there was a No Kings March July 17th.
Yes.
The reason why you don't hear about it is because it failed. It was a flop. Why? Because in July, the Democratic Party was bankrupt. They had their donors had abandoned them, and they had publicly come out and said they didn't have any money because no one was giving to the Democratic Party because they suck and they failed. So they couldn't pay for the protesters. They had to rely on real, true public support. The fringe did come out. It amounted to tens of thousands of people, not millions of people, not hundreds of thousands of people. And they, since after, it was about July 22nd, they changed the name of that July 17th protest. So they went back in history and they rewrote history and said, no, that wasn't a No Kings March. It was a Good Trouble March. Well, you're a liar, because from June to July, you told me it was a No Kings March.
Right.
So this is actually the third No Kings March. And since that time, Democrats have finally raised more money. They're going to pay for the paid protesters. When you have a lot of paid protesters, you tend to not get riots because they're not paid. They're not there to riot. They're there to actually just show up, hold up signs, and don't answer questions from the press, and just be like, yeah, I'm angry, whatever, and until they have to clock out. The violence comes after those guys go home, clock out, and then you get the night shift, which is Antifa, who are violent.
Yeah.
Which is what we see in Chicago and Portland, which is what we've always seen from them when they have a protest. Their violence comes in at night when the main shift goes back home. They clock out, they go back home, they have dinner, and then the Antifa nut jobs, the terrorists, come out and then they destroy the city, try and burn everything, and have the fights with the police. That's what I think we're going to see tomorrow. The morning, they're going to say, it's all beautiful. See, we've got tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people who are paid to be here. Isn't it great? They all hate Donald Trump because we don't have a king in America. Every fifth grader knows that. This is fifth grade information. Did you graduate from elementary school? Then you know America doesn't have a king. This is not ground.
This is bad, Michael. This is bad messaging, man. This is like horrendous.
This is why no one showed up in July. It's because it's complete astroturf. It's not real. No one cares. Oh, dude, we don't need kings in America. We don't have kings in America. Donald Trump was elected by a majority of people. He had a mandate. There are no kings in America. There has never been a king in America. Everyone knows that. You just don't like Donald Trump. Not the same thing. Oh, it's authoritarian. The Democrats had mandates. Trump doesn't. Gee, you're telling me he's an authoritarian? He has no mandates. He cited law for everything he's done. He's enforcing law that the Democrats would not enforce. And Democrats had mandates, which they did enforce. Gee, which one sounds authoritarian to you? Take out your personal preferences. It's pretty simple. So, yeah, it's a failed idea. It's a paid event. And you will see some agitators in some cities, like Chicago, like in Seattle, Portland, LA, New York, probably Austin, and I would say Boulder, Colorado, Aurora, Colorado. Those are going to be the main centers. Detroit, Baltimore, Boston. Those are the main cities you're going to see, and they're all
Michael. I got to go to a wedding tomorrow, so I hope they don't disrupt the wedding. But it's not.
As long as you're home by sunset, probably an hour after.
No, I agree with you. Listen,
an hour after sunset, you should be fine.
Michael, I do have a question or two before we wrap it up, and it's kind of a big question. We did not discuss it at all tonight.
Oh,
kind of the aftermath or looking back at the Charlie Kirk assassination. What has America learned about each other, left, right, or whatever? What lessons has the country taken away from the assassination of Charlie Kirk?
General public knows that there's a problem and it's not resolved. The right knows that the left will kill them.
Okay.
The left knows they're in trouble because everyone knows they're willing to kill people for talking. Those are the three things we know now, without question. Cannot be hidden anymore. It's not a question of my feelings about this or my impression. It is a fact. It is known by everyone now. Cannot be denied. Those are the three things that we see, which is kind of scary because that's not good for the nation. That brings us closer to a civil war, not further away from it.
No, I agree with you. And, I'm sure you've been noticing kind of, I don't want to say a split, but certain segments of the right stating that they don't believe that Tyler Robinson was acting by himself if he did, and if he did shoot. Now, the only observations I have, and I remember watching it, Michael, or right, the aftermath immediately afterwards, and the only things that really stuck out to me were, number one, of course, the cameras being removed, the camera being removed right behind where Charlie Kirk was sitting. But more importantly, I'm sure you've been to, American campuses, and you see the amount of surveillance cameras that were literally everywhere, and not just in parking lots for security, but everywhere. And they showed allegedly Tyler Robinson jumping off the roof with a package or something, supposedly the weapon and whatnot. But I guess my question to you, Michael, is if the FBI and Utah law enforcement, if they want to dispel all these rumors or conspiracy theories, I'm pretty sure and confident, not just me, but professionals that really know this, why not just release Tyler Robinson? I mean, we've already saw the horrible assassination of Charlie Kirk and blood everywhere. Show Tyler Robinson on the roof, however he conducted himself, on the ground, stand crouched or whatever. Show him taking the shot, and then boom, all the conspiracy theories go away. And I'm not saying he didn't do it and won't be convicted of it, but you and I know, maybe you don't see it. I see a ton of this still, and not just Candace Owens and whatnot, that you want to dispel the rumors, answer some of those basic questions. One of them being, if you've got video, and I sternly believe they do, okay, just release it to the public.
Okay. To answer that, the left doesn't want to end the discussions, the conspiracies and conspiracy theories, because it's good for them. It gives them an out. It distracts people from the fact that the left is responsible for this one of many murderous individuals spurred by their ideology. So they want that. Two, there's still a trial. You can't. Even if you have the concrete evidence, it's part of the trial evidence. So you need to hold on to that until this guy, girl, whatever it decides. And I'm not saying that disparagingly. I don't know how to classify it. And I grew up, there's only 3 classifications: male, female, it. That's it. Those are the 3. So when in doubt, it. We don't know what the case is what evidence is going to be used or not used. When that case comes up, that evidence will be presented. That may end a lot of the questions at that point. So we have to get to that point to then, and if it isn't revealed to that point, then we can ask for it. Then I think you're right. We ask, show me all the video. Let me see all the evidence. Because I would not be surprised, and I truly believe this is not isolated. This is a symptom of the ideology, in particular gender identity ideology. It leads to a genetic brick wall. And that creates animosity. It creates angst. And that angst then bleeds out because you're not going to continue to reproduce. Your genetic line is going to end. And you've denied that to yourself based on the promise that, but instead, what you do get is a great life. People will love you. Everything's going to go your way. People will want to date you. You'll have as much sex as you want. People will think you're a wonderful person. All of that is a lie. You get none of that. And you get medical problems like you never expected. They become resentful. They become violent. Thus, we get what we get. So,
Michael, do you believe there's a militant transgender movement where these assassinations could possibly escalate? I mean, we saw prior to that the shooting in Minneapolis at the Catholic school, and there's been a few other ones where they didn't release the manifesto. Is it a legitimate concern? Should the FBI be focusing on it?
Yes, the FBI should. Okay, it's not a militant organization, or it's not unified. This is a natural reaction to the pressure and the situation that the left has created. Their ideology, the gender affirmation mindlessness has created this environment. It's created these consequences. That's why you saw Tennessee. That's why you saw Minnesota. That's why you're seeing all of this. You're seeing more and more trans people often failed interactions. They're leading to violence because they have nothing else.
How about the medications?
Might be a separate issue. There's no one answer about why mass shootings happen. So there's like 38 different core causes of them. This is one, and it should be something that the FBI is paying attention to. It's not organized, though, and I don't blame individual trans people per se. Um, they're not unified in this. Most trans people, and I've known trans people for decades before anyone was talking about trans people, and I can tell you, most of them don't want attention. They don't want a spotlight on them. They just want to live their life. And that's the way they choose to live. They just want to live it. It's the trans movement, the political movement. That's the group I would be watching, because they're the ones who are grooming these violent individuals because they promise them something they will never get. And when they don't get it, and they've been angry and they've been egged on, that's the ones that we see that become the Tennessee, the Minnesota. They become the mass shooters we worry about, not the individual trans person. They're more concerned. Their biggest issue is 45% of them are going to kill themselves. That's what they've done. They self-delete. That number has not reduced.
Yeah.
It has always been consistent. It's always been in the 40 to 45%. They still are having that same result. I'm not worried about the average trans person, because if they're going to hurt anyone, they tend to hurt themselves. I'm worried about the militant political trans person. That's the one that's the mass shooter, and that's the growing number. And I would expect to see 1,000 cases of that over the next 10 years.
Well, Michael, do you see another part of this? Will Turning Point USA, will it continue? Because, I mean, let's face it, Charlie Kirk was, some would say, even instrumental getting President Trump elected with his voter registration efforts and things like that among younger Republicans to get out there and get the vote. Do they appear to be, are they getting stronger? They're going to stay the same? How will the effect of taking the leader out? I mean, the left, I guess they knew what they were doing in that respect. They took out one of the leading young Republicans. Was he 31 years old? They knew he was making big inroads. His fault was believing that the left wanted constructive dialogue, and he died over it. But I mean, do you think, with the sadness of that, something will come out of it where it will compel many young people now to say what Charlie was doing was right, and I'm going to stand for that. I'm going to stand up for that.
Well, you have two things happening simultaneously. I don't think he thought the left believed in speaking, but I do believe he believed that if they heard him, they wouldn't be left anymore. If they actually stopped to listen, that he was going to, many of them will convert, because then he's shining a light on the insanity that they've been indoctrinated into. And there is no question Turning Point USA will change. It has no choice. Its main mission, its main messenger is gone. And his ideology, his drive that created that organization and led that organization, he picked all, it's like changing the CEO of any company. You're going to have a big change in direction. Look at what Bob Iger, look what he did we went from Eisner to Bob Iger. Disney changed, and it went from family friendly to whatever the hell we have right now. Same thing. So you're going to see Turning Point change. You will see that this initial wave of support is going to die down, which is true of any fad, any trend. It's going to die down. I think you're going to see still, versus the baseline of what we saw while Charlie Kirk was alive, you're going to see there's still going to be more Turning Point interactions, more organizations in colleges than there were compared to when he was alive, but not compared to the peak that we're currently going through. It will reduce. It balances out a little bit, but it will balance out higher than where it was previously. And then going forward from there, well, a lot of it has to depend on two things. Who is the voice? What is their message? Who is the voice and the message? Who is the voice? Because they have to be able to be charismatic, They have to be intelligent. They have to be able to communicate with people at different levels of comprehension, and they have to be someone that can embody the values that people will look at and go, "Yeah, I believe this person. I can see that they live the values they're talking about." That's very important. What are you talking about? What is your core? One of the big things that for Charlie, it was God was his guiding main tent pole. Politics came out of his religion, and that led him to be conservative. And many of his positions fall back into that tent pole of religion first. Well, is that going to be true of everyone? Maybe not. Maybe there's a different tent pole. Maybe there's something else that drives them. So that'll have a big impact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And Michael, I want to say this. I'll probably going to be wrapping it up a little bit after we get some more thoughts from you. I was at an event last Friday. It was for Jack Citarelli. It was a rally in Wildwood, New Jersey, and well attended. As soon as I arrived there, I had a brief chat with Scott Pressler. That guy's all over the place. So I spoke to him for a little bit. We have a mutual friend. We're talking about him. And who else? What's his name? The guy, Jack Posaic was there, and there were some local 1210 AM people from radio stations that I know from Philadelphia Conservative Radio. I'd say maybe about 2,000. They said 2,200 maybe showed up. I didn't realize Jack Citarelli in person, Michael. He speaks really well. I mean, he's got some charisma to him. I think he could win. I think that level of support, and you're familiar with the area. Wildwood was a long drive for me, 115 miles one way. People came. I probably was the only guy from Philly that was at a New Jersey rally, but
okay.
But there were a lot of people from all over New Jersey, and I think there were other people from other states as well. But it was well attended. There was a lot of enthusiasm. I think he could beat Mikey. I hope he does, because we're kind of sick of the Democrats running New Jersey. They run it into the ground. But I think Turning Point USA was there. I know we're talking about them, but I think they had a table there, and they had a nice tribute at the end to Charlie Kirk. And, I'm going to be going to CPAC in Dallas in a few months in March. Already got my tickets. I got press credentials last time. I hope they'll give me press credentials again. I know you've had them before. It does help out a little bit. It did help out.
It helps out a lot.
Yes, and I hope to be doing live stuff from there. I might even do have a chat with you live from there. Giving you an update what's going on and out there. Unless you're going out, I don't know if you're going out.
No, I don't have the money this year.
Yeah, it's Michael. Listen, man, I'm not a man of means, and I booked it a while ago, and I'll tell you, I went the last two. They were right side out of Washington, D.C. You and I are close, relatively close to Washington, D.C. I am. Amtrak ride down. Same thing with you. The Dallas, Texas thing's a different story. You got to fly down there, and they're having it at the Gaylord, which is the same property type that they had in D.C. And I think there's one in Orlando, which they'll be having in 27. Will be CPAC in Orlando. But I'm looking forward to it. And they've given me press credentials the last two times. But I guess just to get back to what we were talking about with Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA, they have a significant role to play here for the GOP. I mean, you need people. I mean, you and I were the older part, I guess, of the conservative movement, and we're very important. We keep things going too, but we want people coming up there. And again, I still can't believe that the guy's dead, like Charlie Kirk. It's like I watched him every day. Because I used to watch the War Room. He'd come on afterwards. It's almost like surreal to me, but it is real, and we got to do something. We have to move forward, and we have to learn stuff from that. But what I learned, Michael, I don't think there's any middle ground between us and the left. I don't think that there's no dialogue.
I disagree with that. There's no middle ground between their leadership, which tends to be far left. Right. Even whether it's in the DNC or the DSA or the various progressive organizations, they're all far left. They're pushing the rest of their parties, the rest of the machine, further and further left, because that's where they are, and they're ahead of everyone else in that movement. We can converse with and interact with and convert even some of the people who are not part of that leadership. Great example of that, big name, your state, John Fetterman.
Yes.
John Fetterman, he started off and we thought he was part of that leadership of that progressive movement. Turns out, no, he was just a regular Democrat who was at that moment in time, he was like, yeah, I'm progressive, because at this moment they lined up. The left kept moving left. He stayed where he was. He's now pretty damn close to center right, because he didn't keep moving left with the rest of them. He just stayed where he was for the most part.
Right.
Which is why he seems so conservative leaning now. It's not. It's because the left left him.
Yes. Yes.
I still say he shouldn't be elected because he's still mentally damaged, because it's medically true. But whether he's on the right or left, I don't care. He shouldn't be in there, but that's me. So that, yes, we can talk to rank and file Democrats, not leadership. We can still move forward and we can deal with rank and file Democrats, not the leadership. The problem is the leadership can cause conflict. Their guidance will lead to conflict with the rank and file, because the rank and file have been trained, do whatever the leadership says. Doesn't matter if it's true, doesn't matter if it's right. If the leadership said do it, they do it. And that's where our problem is. We have to find a way to deal with that leadership.
Now, well said. Michael, listen, before we wrap it up here, is there anything you'd like to cover, domestic or international, or do you want us to wrap it up now? Because I want to let the audience know certainly about what you do every Sunday and other days of the week, and where they can find you on YouTube. And, I know the Sunday things are great, man. I jump in and out of them once in a while. I won't lie to you, Michael. I can't do 5-6 hours like you, but I know you keep it. I know you keep the listener engaged. And that's a great thing. If you don't have anything else to comment on, we can. Okay, I know we went pretty long tonight, but that's good. It's a Friday night, and
long for you, not for me.
That's true too. Michael,
not long for me.
No, I know. Where can the Matthew J Show followers and listeners find Michael Vass?
Well, you can go any platform, plug it into Google, any search, even with the suppression. If you type in "no soundbites allowed,"
right,
you will get me. I'm in every search engine in the world, the chat bot, Chat GPT, Grok. They all know who I am. Just type that in, you will get me. So it tells you I got some kind of recognition. I'm not unknown.
No, you're not unknown, Michael. I'm telling you, man. I can find you, and I do watch you certainly on YouTube and X. I try to jump on there as much as I can. Looking at your account, and I did prior to the show just to talk about the potential New York City mayor and what he's emulating out of the Eugene, Oregon program, which you laid out to the audience very well. But Michael, thanks for joining us here at the Matthew J Show. We always love when you come on here, and you've got the gift of the gab like Matthew J does, which is great, man. But there's a lot of important issues out there, and it's incumbent upon you and I to really dissect things. And I think we've been following things so closely for so many years. We have to let and I'm not bragging here, our knowledge out there, because we know, Michael, that the complicit media out there spins the same thing. We need to we have to come in there with precision and dissect these issues so the American people can get a better understanding of what they're seeing every day. And I think that's important.
Oh, it's absolutely important. That's why on every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do my weekly show.
Right.
That's my guaranteed weekly show. I've been doing it for 8 years now. And that's the long show that Matthew's talking about. It can go about 5, 6, 7 hours. And no problem. People come in and out, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But when I do that show, something you may have noticed, I own 90, maybe 95% of all my sources are all left leaning. I don't use,
Yes.
I actively make a point to not use any right leaning sources when I'm discussing all the issues that are affecting us. Because I always hate when they go, oh, but you're just a Republican. You're just being a parrot. No, no. Everything I'm talking about, this is what the left leaning media has said. Let me prove my point.
No, it's a great approach, Michael. It's a great approach, man, because they can't say, you say, hey, man, I got this off NBC or CNN. This is from your side, man, not me. So that's the way you want to approach it.
Huffington Post, The Guardian, all the international credible left leaning sources, and they really don't like that I do that.
Yeah, and I want to remind everybody out there in MatthewJShow land. Michael's on every Sunday. You said starting at 2:30, right?
Yep.
It's a great show, and I recommend everybody tune into it. Michael, thanks for joining us tonight. Obviously, we'll be in contact again very soon, and I want to do it again, and I'm sure we're going to have plenty to talk about.
I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely.
And have a great night, Michael.
You as well. Thank you, everyone.